It was the kind of event Silicon Valley had been buzzing about for weeks, a tech conference that promised to showcase the latest innovations in AI, space travel, and quantum computing. Elon Musk, the enigmatic CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, was scheduled to give a keynote speech on the future of human space exploration. The auditorium was packed, standing room only, with the brightest minds in technology eagerly awaiting his insights. As the lights dimmed, the crowd fell silent, anticipating the groundbreaking ideas that would undoubtedly come from one of the most famous innovators of our time. A spotlight hit the stage, and Elon Musk, dressed in his signature black jacket, stepped forward to the podium. He smiled, nodded to the crowd, and began his talk. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, his voice calm but commanding, "the future of humanity lies in our ability to explore beyond the stars. We're on the brink of something monumental. Mars is no longer a dream, it's a plan. But to get there, we need to rethink everything we know about space, technology, and what it means to be human." The crowd erupted in applause. But just as Elon continued to outline his vision for SpaceX's Mars mission, something unexpected happened. A hand shot up from the audience. A young voice, sharp and confident, cut through the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Musk," the voice said, "but you're wrong." The room fell into stunned silence. Every head turned to see who had dared to interrupt the world-renowned entrepreneur. A teenager, no older than 17, was standing in the middle of the aisle. His messy hair was barely contained by a band, and he wore a simple t-shirt with a logo no one recognized. The contrast between his youth and the high-profile audience was striking. His face was calm, yet his eyes burned with the intensity of someone who knew something the rest of the world didn't. Elon, taken aback, raised an eyebrow. "I beg your pardon," he asked, not sure if he'd heard right. The young man didn't hesitate. "The trajectory you're talking about for Mars, it's all wrong. The way you're thinking about propulsion, fuel, and the way humans will adapt to deep space, it's all based on outdated paradigms. If you really want to get to Mars and beyond, you're going to need to completely rethink your assumptions. Otherwise, you'll be wasting billions on a plan that won't work." A wave of nervous laughter rippled through the audience. People weren't sure if they should be amused or annoyed. Some whispered to each other, speculating who this kid was, while others were waiting for Elon to respond with the usual dry humor and dismissive retort. But instead of brushing off the challenge, Elon's interest peaked. He leaned into the microphone. "All right, young man," he said with a slight smile, his tone amused but intrigued. "You've got my attention. Care to explain how we should be thinking about it differently?" The young man's face remained calm, almost stoic, as he began to speak. His words flowing like a river of ideas that were so far beyond the usual rhetoric of Silicon Valley. He wasn't just talking about space. He was talking about quantum physics, the future of artificial intelligence, and the very fabric of the universe in a way that made most experts in the room sit up straighter. "I'm Alex," the boy said, "and what I'm saying is simple. The problem isn't about getting to Mars. It's about creating a self-sustaining ecosystem in deep space. If you rely on conventional propulsion and power sources, you'll never get far enough. You'll be stuck in low Earth orbit, and your mission will be doomed from the start. The solution lies in quantum computing, advanced AI systems capable of manipulating space-time, and bioengineering solutions that can create energy from non-conventional sources. If you think inside the box, you'll never get beyond Earth's gravity well." The crowd was in disbelief. The confidence in Alex's words wasn't just surprising. It was almost unsettling. It was as if he was speaking in a language they couldn't fully understand. Elon, however, didn't show signs of irritation. Instead, he was fascinated. "That's an interesting perspective, Alex," Elon said, his voice betraying no trace of sarcasm. "Tell me more." Alex took a deep breath, standing tall in front of thousands of people, and launched into an explanation so detailed that it was impossible to keep track of all the concepts he was laying out. He spoke about quantum tunneling, gravitational anomalies, and AI's potential to develop self-replicating technologies in space. Ideas so advanced, most of the room couldn't follow them. But Elon Musk did. And with each passing minute, the CEO of SpaceX began to realize that this young man wasn't just some kid with a bold opinion. He was talking about concepts that could reshape everything. For the first time in years, Elon felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. What if Alex was right? What if this was the missing link in his plans to push humanity into the next frontier? The thought hit him like a lightning bolt. This kid has something no one else does. The audience, too, was taken aback by the raw brilliance Alex was displaying. Some people exchanged glances, others furiously scribbled notes. But most just sat in stunned silence, watching the dynamic between the young genius and the tech titan unfold before them. When Alex finally stopped, the silence in the room was deafening. Elon, who had been leaning forward, hands clasped together, took a moment to process what he had just heard. Then, he leaned into the microphone again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon said, a playful grin on his face, attempting to break the tension but also, in his way, connecting with the audience. The young genius had just thrown down a gauntlet, and it was clear to everyone in the room. This wasn't just an interruption. This was the beginning of something that could change everything. The conference ended in a whirlwind of excitement and confusion. The audience, still reeling from the dramatic moment between Alex and Elon, left the auditorium buzzing with speculation. Was Alex really a genius? Or was he simply a gifted but eccentric teenager who had managed to catch Elon Musk off guard? No one seemed to know for sure, but one thing was certain. Alex had gotten everyone's attention. As for Alex, he didn't stick around to bask in the limelight. In fact, he wasn't the type to enjoy the spotlight at all. Instead of soaking in the praise and questions that followed his impromptu speech, he slipped out of the auditorium as quietly as he had arrived, his mind already racing ahead to the next challenge. He had always been like this, too focused on ideas to care about recognition. Alex's story began long before that conference. In a small, quiet town in Northern California, far from the tech hubs of Silicon Valley, he had grown up with a mind that refused to follow the usual rules. He was a child prodigy, gifted with an IQ that had reached 228 before he had even hit double digits. But as anyone who's ever been labeled a genius knows, brilliance can be both a gift and a curse. His parents, both school teachers, were supportive but often overwhelmed. They had no idea how to nurture such extraordinary intelligence, especially since Alex's interests didn't align with the typical childhood pursuits. While other kids played video games or soccer, Alex spent his afternoons reading textbooks on quantum physics, coding new algorithms, and sketching blueprints for inventions that seemed impossible. To his teachers, Alex wasn't a student. They often referred to him as a project, an enigma to be solved. At first, his family thought his interests were just a phase. But by the time Alex was 10, it was clear that something far beyond the ordinary was happening. When his parents tried to engage him in regular childhood activities, soccer games, birthday parties, even simple conversations, Alex would drift away, lost in thoughts that were too complex for anyone to follow. He didn't quite fit in with other kids his age, and as the years passed, the gap between him and his peers only grew wider. Alex didn't mind, at least not at first. He preferred the company of books to the chaos of schoolyard games. But eventually, he came to realize that his isolation wasn't a choice. It was a consequence of his own brilliance. His peers didn't understand him, and as much as he tried to explain his ideas, they were dismissed as too abstract, too advanced. The occasional teasing was easy to ignore, but the loneliness, that was harder to shake off. By the time he was 14, Alex had given up trying to fit in. Instead, he retreated into his own world. His parents, now fully aware of the depth of his intellectual capabilities, did their best to support him. But there was little they could do. Alex's mind didn't just work differently. It operated on a level far beyond their comprehension. They arranged private tutors, enrolled him in advanced programs, and allowed him to develop his projects at home. But even they couldn't offer the guidance he truly needed. He had outgrown them. Still, one thing remained constant in Alex's life: his obsession with space. Even from a young age, he had been fascinated by the stars. He devoured books on astrophysics, and by 16, had already developed an intricate understanding of black holes, quantum mechanics, and space-time. It wasn't just idle curiosity. It was a deep, driving need to understand how the universe worked at its most fundamental level. That's when Alex discovered Elon Musk. To most teenagers, Musk was a larger-than-life figure, someone who was revolutionizing multiple industries and changing the world. To Alex, Elon was more than that. He was the embodiment of what was possible when a visionary dared to think differently. Elon's work at SpaceX, his mission to send humans to Mars, had captured Alex's imagination like nothing else. For the first time, Alex found himself thinking about something other than equations and theories. He thought about the future of humanity, the limits of human potential, and the role technology would play in making the impossible possible. But as much as he admired Elon, Alex wasn't content to simply follow in his footsteps. He had his own ideas, ideas that were, in many ways, more radical than anything Elon Musk had ever proposed. By the time Alex was 17, he had formulated his own theory about space travel. In his mind, the traditional approach to propulsion and energy consumption would never get humanity to Mars, let alone beyond it. If humans were going to truly explore the stars, they needed to rethink space travel entirely. They needed to harness quantum computing and AI in ways that would radically alter the way we understood physics. But more importantly, they needed to rethink energy itself, how it was produced, stored, and consumed. It was a concept so advanced, so far ahead of its time, that Alex knew no one would take him seriously. After all, he was just a kid. And yet, he believed that these ideas were the key to unlocking the future of human space exploration. So, he did what any determined prodigy would do. He set out to prove it. Without formal recognition, without the support of any prestigious institution, Alex began working on his theories in secret. Late into the night, when the world around him was asleep, Alex would be at his desk, scribbling equations on scraps of paper, developing prototypes for energy harvesting devices, and designing software that could run complex simulations of space-time manipulation. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew that, like so many before him, he would face skepticism, rejection, and possibly even ridicule. But none of that mattered to him. For Alex, there was only one thing that mattered: getting his ideas into the world. After the conference, Elon Musk couldn't stop thinking about the young man, Alex. The teenage genius had turned the event upside down with his bold interruption, but what was even more unsettling was the way he had talked. Alex hadn't been some overconfident kid trying to show off. He had been serious, logical, and spoke with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. Every word he said made sense, but in a way that was so far ahead of anything Elon had heard before. And that's what intrigued him the most. For the first time in years, Elon felt challenged. Not by the usual competitors or critics who filled the halls of the tech world with noise, but by a quiet, unassuming young man with an IQ that was off the charts. Elon wasn't one to ignore challenges, especially when they had the potential to alter the course of his work. He knew the questions Alex had raised weren't easily dismissed. So, he did what he did best. He followed through. Within hours of the conference, Elon had his assistant reach out to Alex, arranging a meeting. It was clear that the young man had more to offer than a simple critique. Elon wanted to know more, to dig deeper into the ideas Alex had so passionately discussed. The meeting took place the following week at SpaceX headquarters, in the heart of Hawthorne, California. Elon, ever the master of keeping his emotions hidden, sat across from Alex in a minimalist conference room. There were no distractions, just the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional beep of a nearby terminal. Alex, of course, was unfazed by the setting. He was used to isolation, and this sterile environment, with its sharp angles and sleek design, was exactly the kind of place where he felt most comfortable. He wasn't here to impress Elon Musk with his personality. He was here to make his ideas heard. Elon leaned back in his chair, studying Alex for a moment before speaking. "So," Elon said, breaking the silence, "tell me more about this idea you have for space propulsion. You mentioned quantum computing, AI, and energy harvesting? You're suggesting these are the key to revolutionizing interplanetary travel?" Alex nodded, his eyes lighting up as he began to explain further. "It's not just propulsion. It's about energy. The way we produce and consume energy today is outdated for the challenges we'll face in deep space. Solar panels won't cut it beyond Mars, and traditional fuel methods are too slow. What we need is a way to harness energy from space itself, something that could power a ship for months or years without relying on traditional fuel sources. Elon raised an eyebrow. Are you saying we can capture energy from space? Like harnessing radiation or cosmic particles? Alex's expression didn't waver. Exactly. But more than that, it's about tapping into the fabric of space-time itself. Imagine manipulating quantum fields to extract energy directly from the quantum vacuum. You could generate power at a scale unimaginable with current technology. It would completely change the game, not just for space exploration, but for every energy-dependent technology on Earth. Elon was quiet for a moment, mulling over the implications of what Alex was proposing. And you think this is achievable? Right now? With the tech we have? Alex didn't hesitate. Yes. With the right computational power and an AI capable of processing vast amounts of quantum data, we could begin making prototypes. I've already run simulations and built rudimentary models that show it's possible. Elon leaned forward. How would you propose we build such an AI? Quantum computers. A quantum AI capable of understanding and manipulating the smallest aspects of the quantum world. Think of it like a superintelligent algorithm that can interact with quantum mechanics in real time. With this AI, we could develop systems that adapt and evolve based on the specific conditions of deep space. Elon sat back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. He had spent years working on SpaceX's Mars mission, pushing the boundaries of space technology. But Alex's proposal was unlike anything he had ever considered. It wasn't just ambitious, it was revolutionary. And it was clear that Alex believed it could be done. But the more Elon thought about it, the more questions he had. What did this mean for the future of humanity? If Alex was right, and these technologies could indeed change the very nature of space exploration, what kind of risks were they looking at? Were they ready to pursue such a bold, unknown frontier? Elon knew that every great leap forward came with its own set of dangers, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to take that risk with a teenager, no matter how brilliant he was. You understand this is a huge undertaking, Elon said, his voice carefully measured. We're talking about fundamentally altering how we approach space travel, energy production, and maybe even the way we understand the universe. This isn't something that can just be prototyped and tested in a lab. Alex's gaze never faltered. I'm not asking you to do it alone. I'm asking you to be the first to take the leap. You've already done the impossible with SpaceX. You've made the world believe Mars is achievable. But this is beyond Mars. This is about taking humanity's destiny into the stars. If we don't start working on it now, we'll be left behind. Elon felt a twinge of uncertainty, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He had taken risks before, but this was different. But something in Alex's eyes, the raw, unshakable conviction, made Elon wonder if this was the next frontier. I'll tell you what, Elon said, leaning forward again. Let's do this. But you need to prove it. I'm not going to bet billions on something that's just an idea. I need to see results. Alex's face broke into a small, knowing smile. I've already got the results. Just give me the resources, and I'll show you how we can do it. The days following the meeting at SpaceX were a blur of activity. Elon had given Alex what he wanted, resources. But there were strings attached. Elon wasn't the type to invest blindly, and he certainly wasn't willing to hand over the future of SpaceX on the whim of a teenager. The deal was clear. Alex would get access to the resources of one of the world's most cutting-edge tech companies, but he had to prove his theories. It wasn't enough to just talk about quantum energy and AI systems capable of manipulating space-time. Alex had to show results. The first few weeks were grueling. Elon's team of engineers, scientists, and AI experts was as skeptical as he had been at first, but Alex's ideas were so radical, they couldn't help but be curious. The young genius dove into the research with unparalleled focus. He worked long hours, often staying up until the early hours of the morning, running simulations on quantum computers that SpaceX had only just begun experimenting with. He experimented with energy harvesting prototypes, sending endless streams of data to Elon's team. But there were no breakthroughs, at least, not in the way anyone expected. Every time Alex thought he was close, something went wrong. The simulations didn't behave the way they were supposed to. His energy prototypes sputtered out after just a few minutes, failing to produce the kind of power he had hoped for. Frustration began to set in. One evening, after another failed test, Alex stood in front of the quantum computer, staring at the code that had just crashed again. The screen was filled with error messages, all variations on the same theme. Insufficient data. He sighed deeply, rubbing his eyes, feeling the weight of failure press against his chest. In the silence of the lab, the faint buzz of the cooling systems and the low hum of the computers seemed to mock him. "Come on, just one more breakthrough," Alex muttered to himself, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. But nothing seemed to make sense anymore. He was running out of time. Elon had given him an ultimatum: prove it or walk away. The pressure was mounting. But in the quiet desperation of the moment, Alex did something different. Instead of trying to force the algorithms to behave in a way they couldn't, he stepped back. He closed his eyes and let his mind wander, thinking about the problem in a new way. What if I'm looking at this all wrong? The answer, when it came, wasn't in the formulas or the calculations. It was in the principles of quantum physics itself, the concept of entanglement, the idea that particles separated by vast distances could still influence each other instantaneously. What if energy, instead of being something that needed to be generated or extracted, could be transferred through quantum entanglement? Alex's heart raced. This was it, the key to unlocking the energy dilemma. He knew he had found something. His fingers flew across the keyboard, rewriting his simulations. Instead of relying on the traditional methods of energy harvesting, he restructured the entire system to incorporate quantum entanglement and manipulation of the energy fields through an AI-driven model. The goal wasn't to harvest energy. It was to tap into the energy of the universe itself, bypassing the limitations of conventional energy sources. Within minutes, he hit run. The computer hummed as the new simulation began. The numbers on the screen began to shift, responding in ways that had never happened before. The energy levels, once stagnant, began to spike in an orderly, controlled pattern. Alex's breath caught in his throat. It was working. "Yes," he whispered under his breath, eyes wide with disbelief. He watched as the simulation ran, confirming his theory. He had unlocked a new way to manipulate energy. But this wasn't just theoretical anymore. It was real. This breakthrough could change everything. The next day, Alex stood in front of Elon Musk and a team of engineers at SpaceX headquarters. The pressure was palpable, but Alex didn't feel nervous. Instead, he felt a strange calm, knowing that he had something that no one else in the world had. "All right," Elon said, after a tense silence. "Show me what you've got." Alex took a deep breath and, without hesitation, pulled up the data from the quantum simulation he had run the night before. The room was quiet as the results began to populate the screen. Alex explained how he had restructured the energy harvesting model, using quantum entanglement to tap into the energy fields that permeated the universe. As the engineers glanced over the data, a few exchanged incredulous looks. But Elon? He leaned forward, scrutinizing the figures with an intensity that mirrored Alex's own. "You're telling me that this method could provide unlimited energy?" Elon asked, his voice low. Alex nodded. "Not unlimited per se, but it's a new way to generate power. It's not bound by traditional laws of physics as we understand them. With this technology, we could power spacecraft with a fraction of the mass and fuel required by conventional methods." Elon's eyes gleamed. "And this can be scaled? We could use it for deep space missions?" "That's the plan, and not just for SpaceX. If we can refine this process, it could change energy production on Earth. It could change everything." The room fell silent as the engineers processed the implications of what Alex was proposing. "You understand," Elon began slowly, "that if this works, we're looking at something that could redefine the entire course of human history. Energy would no longer be a limiting factor in space travel or in life on Earth. We'd have access to power on an unimaginable scale." Alex nodded. "That's exactly it." For a moment, there was a quiet pause. Then Elon spoke, his voice firm and resolute. "All right, let's do it. We move forward. But we're not just testing theories anymore. This is going to be real. Start building prototypes. I want to see this in action." Alex couldn't believe it. After weeks of failure, after the frustration and self-doubt, he had finally made it. Elon Musk, one of the greatest minds in modern technology, was backing him. And just like that, the gears of destiny began to turn. As the engineers got to work, Alex felt a surge of energy like he had never known before. He wasn't just working for himself now. He was working for humanity's future. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges, obstacles, and unexpected setbacks. But for the first time, Alex knew that he was on the right path. This was just the beginning. The universe had opened up to him, and he had the keys to unlock its mysteries. The next few months passed in a blur of activity. SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne was transformed into a war room of sorts, where engineers, scientists, and technicians worked around the clock, trying to bring Alex's quantum energy concept to life. But there was one key difference this time. Alex wasn't just an observer. He was the driving force. His brainchild had been validated, and now he was responsible for making it work. The pressure was immense. In the early stages, things were surprisingly smooth. Alex's simulations ran like clockwork, and the early prototypes of his energy-generating devices performed better than anyone expected. The engineers marveled at the results, energy output that was orders of magnitude greater than anything they'd ever seen from traditional solar panels or nuclear reactors. But as the prototype neared completion, the stakes grew higher. Elon Musk, ever the perfectionist, began pushing for faster results, and the questions started coming. Could this really work on a large scale? What were the unforeseen consequences of tapping into the quantum vacuum? What if they were messing with forces they didn't fully understand? And then, there was the emotional toll it took on Alex. His initial sense of purpose began to erode under the weight of expectations. It was one thing to be a theoretical genius, to dream up impossible concepts in the quiet of his room. But now, with the world watching, the pressure to perform was suffocating. Each failure, each unexpected glitch in the system, felt like a personal defeat. It didn't help that Elon's presence loomed large over everything. While Elon was no stranger to risk-taking, he had a way of demanding more than anyone could give. As the project reached its critical phase, Alex found himself losing sleep over every tiny detail. The simulation results weren't always as perfect as they had been. The energy prototypes, which once hummed with life, began to sputter. Every error in the system made Alex's heart race, and with each failure came a creeping sense of doubt. One late evening, after a particularly grueling test that had failed yet again, Alex stood in the lab, staring at the prototype. The device, a sleek, angular object that resembled a small satellite dish, lay motionless on the table. It should have been generating energy, feeding data back into the system, but instead, it was dead. Elon's voice echoed in his mind. "We can't afford to fail again, Alex." "Not now." Alex ran his fingers through his hair and let out a frustrated breath. He had spent the past 48 hours straight tweaking the system, running diagnostics, rewriting code, but nothing seemed to work. "Why isn't it working?" he whispered to himself, his voice low and full of defeat. His exhaustion was becoming more than just physical. It was eating away at his confidence. The door to the lab opened, and Elon walked in, his expression unreadable. "How's it going?" he asked. Alex barely looked up, his hands shaking as he wiped them on his jeans. "Not great. The prototype's not responding the way we expected. I'm not sure what went wrong." Elon paused, studying Alex closely. "Alex, look at me." His voice softened, and for a brief moment, there was something almost fatherly in his tone. "This is the kind of work that can make history, but it's not going to be easy. You're pushing the limits of what we know. This won't happen overnight." Alex nodded, but his heart wasn't in it. The pressure felt like it was suffocating him. "What if I've already hit the limits?" he muttered, mostly to himself. "What if this is just too far ahead of its time? I can't seem to get it to work." For a long moment, Elon didn't respond. Then, slowly, he walked up to the table and examined the prototype. He didn't offer any advice, or even a comforting word. Instead, he bent down, carefully inspecting the device. His hands moved with a purpose, adjusting something, aligning the energy coils just slightly. Then, he hit the button to run the system. Alex watched, wide-eyed, as the prototype hummed to life. Slowly, the small lights on the device flickered on, then stabilized into a steady glow. The system wasn't perfect, but it was working. Sometimes, Elon said, looking at Alex, the breakthrough doesn't come when you're pushing hardest. Sometimes, it comes when you step back and let the system find its own way. Alex's eyes were fixed on the device, the realization dawning on him. The rush of relief he felt was almost overwhelming. He couldn't help but smile, a rare, almost childlike smile that spread across his face. "You mean, I wasn't looking at it the right way?" Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Exactly," Elon replied. "And that's why you're a genius, Alex. You think beyond the obvious. But even the greatest minds need to learn to trust the process. You have the power to change everything, but you don't need to do it all at once. The universe doesn't work like that." Alex exhaled, his chest feeling lighter. He hadn't realized how much the pressure had been weighing on him until this moment. Elon was right. He was so focused on getting the perfect solution, the one breakthrough that would make everything fall into place, that he had lost sight of the larger picture. As the lights on the prototype stabilized, Alex felt something shift inside him. It wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. It was about finding the right rhythm, even when it seemed like everything was falling apart. "Thank you," Alex said, his voice quiet but sincere. Elon gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning." As the two of them stood there, watching the prototype come to life, a shared sense of accomplishment hung in the air. But neither of them knew yet just how much this moment would change their lives and the course of human history. That night, Alex lay awake in his bed, his mind racing. But for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of calm. The prototype was working. He had done it. The next step was to refine the system, scale it up, and build a prototype that could be used in space missions. But Alex knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about proving his theories to the world. It was about reshaping the future. The energy prototype was no longer just a hopeful theory. It had taken on a life of its own, humming with potential. Alex's breakthrough had not only revived the project, but it had also breathed new energy into the SpaceX team. The engineers, once skeptical, were now working with a renewed sense of purpose. Elon Musk had promised big. He wasn't just backing this project, he was all in. He believed in Alex's potential to change the course of history, and he was prepared to throw SpaceX's resources into making it happen. But Elon wasn't one to sit idly by. He pushed harder now, urging the team to test Alex's quantum energy system in real-world conditions. They couldn't just tinker with prototypes forever. They had to take it to the next level. A space mission. Not just any mission either. Elon had the perfect test case in mind. A manned mission to Mars. "We're going to need energy. Real, sustainable power. To survive out there," Elon had said, pacing in front of Alex in one of their strategy meetings. "Your system could be the key to making that happen. We're talking about long-term survival on Mars. Life support, transportation, everything. It's not just about getting there. It's about staying there." Alex had been stunned. Mars. The idea of sending his technology to the red planet was both terrifying and exhilarating. But there was no turning back now. If he could make this work on Mars, it would validate everything he had spent years theorizing. It wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a ticket to the future of humanity. Still, the mission wasn't without its challenges. Testing the prototype on Earth was one thing, but Mars? The harsh conditions of the Martian surface, with its thin atmosphere, extreme cold, and radiation, posed a completely different set of problems. The team had to account for everything, from the power requirements of life support systems to the energy needed for transport. And then there were the unknowns. The quantum energy system had never been tested in a space environment before. What if the system malfunctioned, or worse, shorted out during the mission? Elon didn't hesitate to ask the hard questions. "We can't afford failure, Alex. If this fails, it could set us back years." Alex understood the weight of Elon's words. His invention was the cornerstone of SpaceX's Mars mission, and the entire future of space exploration rested on his shoulders. The pressure was mounting again, but this time, Alex wasn't backing down. He had come too far to stop now. The next few weeks were a blur of activity as the team worked to integrate Alex's system into the Mars-bound spacecraft. Engineers were building out the power grid that would use Alex's energy system to fuel everything on the spacecraft. The AI-driven quantum entanglement model would work to harvest energy from deep space, essentially creating an infinite power source that would keep the crew alive and the ship functional for months, even years, on their journey. But as the launch date drew nearer, the stakes grew higher. Alex couldn't help but think back to the early days of the project, the frustration, the failures. Now, here he was, a teenager on the verge of changing everything. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized just how little control he had. The prototype might work, but the environment of space? It was a whole new beast. One night, after a long day of testing, Alex sat alone in the control room. The hum of the equipment filled the silence, and the lights from the consoles flickered in the otherwise dark space. He had sent the team home, needing some time to think. He wasn't just worried about the success of the mission. It was something deeper. What if this technology was too powerful? What if it wasn't ready for prime time? And, more chillingly, what if there were unintended consequences? Could they trust the system to behave as it had on Earth? Or would space introduce variables they hadn't anticipated? Stop thinking like this, Alex muttered to himself. You've made it this far. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. It was then that Elon stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. He had always been a man of action, rarely allowing personal doubts to cloud his judgment. But tonight, Alex saw something different in Elon's eyes, something that made his stomach tighten. You're worried, Elon said, his voice calm but firm. I can see it in your eyes. We all are. Alex didn't deny it. How can I not be? This is Mars, Elon. We're testing something that has never been tested before. What if it doesn't work? What if we make a mistake? Elon walked over to the console and glanced at the data running across the screen. Then, without looking at Alex, he spoke quietly. You know, the hardest thing for any innovator is taking that leap. You've done it before. You've made the impossible happen. Alex shook his head. But what if the impossible is too big this time? Elon turned to face him, his gaze sharp. That's why we're testing it now. We don't just throw things into the unknown without being ready. We've been testing this system for months. Your quantum energy prototype isn't just an idea anymore. It's a tangible reality. The real question is, can we trust ourselves to take the next step? Because if we don't, humanity stays on Earth. But if you're right, if this works, then everything changes. Alex felt a surge of emotion he hadn't expected. It wasn't just pressure. It was the weight of human history on his shoulders. You really think I can do this? Elon's expression softened, just for a moment. I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't. You've already done more than I thought possible. But this isn't just about tech. It's about vision. And you, Alex, you've got that vision. You're not just thinking about what's in front of you. You're thinking about the future. You're thinking about what's next. Alex felt his heart skip a beat. For the first time in months, he wasn't just solving a problem for himself. He was solving a problem for everyone. He nodded, his resolve firming up. All right, let's do this. Let's take the next step. The next morning, the countdown to the Mars mission officially began. The spacecraft was ready. The prototype was in place. And Alex's quantum energy system was ready for its biggest test yet. As the crew suited up and the final preparations were made, Alex stood with Elon in the control room, watching the final checks. The tension in the air was palpable. They were about to send humanity's future on a path that no one had dared to imagine. For a brief moment, Alex allowed himself to take it all in. He had come from a quiet high school classroom to this moment, the very edge of history. The countdown clock ticked down. 10, 9, 8. Alex's heart raced, his thoughts racing as the reality of what was about to happen hit him. 7, 6, 5. This was it. The moment of truth. 4, 3, 2. Launch sequence initiated. The technician's voice echoed through the room. 1. Liftoff. The spacecraft blasted off into the sky, the sound of the engines shaking the walls as it ascended, leaving Earth behind. And with it, Alex's dream. The mission to Mars was underway. The spacecraft had successfully launched, and Alex, along with Elon and the rest of the SpaceX team, watched it ascend from their control center. It was a momentous achievement, one that represented years of hard work, failure, and finally, groundbreaking success. Yet, despite the excitement, a quiet tension hung in the air. It was one thing to have the prototype running on Earth. It was another thing entirely to rely on it in the unforgiving vacuum of space. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The hard part was yet to come. The spacecraft was still in Earth's orbit, moving closer to the Moon before beginning its trajectory toward Mars. Over the next few days, everything would be tested: the propulsion systems, the life support units, the quantum energy prototype that Alex had developed. From the moment the spacecraft cleared the atmosphere, Alex had been on edge. The constant stream of telemetry data from the spacecraft was both reassuring and alarming. Every small fluctuation in the power readings, every minor delay, made his heart race. It wasn't that the prototype wasn't working, it was. The energy system had stabilized, and everything was running smoothly. But this was Mars. Everything had to be perfect. For the first few days, things seemed to go according to plan. The crew aboard the spacecraft reported no major issues. The energy prototype was powering the ship's life support systems, communication arrays, and even the propulsion units with a level of efficiency that made Alex's jaw drop. He had created something revolutionary, something that was making long-duration space travel not only feasible but sustainable. However, as the spacecraft continued on its journey, Alex's sense of unease deepened. He found himself unable to focus on anything other than the stream of data coming from the ship. Every message from the crew was scrutinized. Every report was read and reread. The countdown to Mars seemed to slow, as though time itself had decided to drag out the waiting. A week into the journey, the first real test arrived. The spacecraft was just passing the asteroid belt, a particularly treacherous stretch of space where debris could pose a danger to the ship's hull. The quantum energy system had been designed to handle external stresses, but this was a different kind of challenge. The asteroid belt was notorious for its gravitational anomalies, and the ship's trajectory had to be adjusted constantly to avoid collisions. That was when the first anomaly occurred. The telemetry data from the spacecraft began to spike, indicating a sudden fluctuation in the power systems. The quantum energy unit, which had been running perfectly up until this point, seemed to be experiencing a strange energy drain. The crew reported no immediate danger, but the system wasn't responding the way it should. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had expected some issues along the way, but nothing this early in the mission. "Alex," a voice crackled through his earpiece, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was one of the engineers back at SpaceX's control center. "We're detecting an unusual energy fluctuation coming from the quantum system. The energy output has dropped by 20%. We need your input on how to fix it." Alex's mind raced. He had anticipated the prototype being imperfect, but this early in the mission, the system wasn't supposed to fluctuate this much, especially given the precautions they had taken to account for space conditions. "All right," Alex replied, trying to steady his breathing. "I'm reviewing the data now. Run a diagnostic on the entanglement calibration. Check the quantum fields. They could be responding to the gravitational shifts in the asteroid belt. It might be disrupting the way the system draws power." Minutes felt like hours as Alex pored over the data from the spacecraft. He watched the numbers flicker on his screen, trying to make sense of the anomaly. His mind was racing, but he knew he had to stay focused. This was his responsibility. If the energy system failed now, the crew could be stranded. There was no room for error. The technician back at the control center relayed the results. The fluctuation had been minor, but it was enough to set off a chain reaction. Alex's heart sank. The system wasn't stable. The quantum entanglement algorithm, which had been designed to provide near-unlimited energy, was being disrupted by forces they hadn't accounted for. The shift in gravitational fields had caused the particles to misalign, creating a temporary energy drain. But there was a solution. Alex quickly sketched a series of adjustments, reprogramming the quantum entanglement model to compensate for the gravitational distortions. The energy drain wasn't permanent. It was simply a reaction to the changes in space conditions. They had built safeguards into the system, but Alex needed to fine-tune them. "Send the update to the spacecraft," Alex instructed. "It's a calibration issue. Once the system realigns the quantum fields, it'll stabilize." His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he waited for the confirmation. The minutes stretched on. Finally, a voice crackled through the comms. "We've initiated the recalibration. It's in process." Alex leaned back in his chair, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The tension didn't ease entirely, but at least he knew they had the situation under control, at least for now. The recalibration worked. The energy levels gradually returned to normal, and the spacecraft continued its journey toward Mars. But Alex couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was only the beginning. The mission was far from over. They still had to navigate the vastness of space, with its countless variables and unpredictable forces. The quantum energy system had passed its first test, but Alex knew that there were more challenges ahead. As the days went on, the spacecraft entered deep space, with Mars drawing closer. The crew checked in regularly, reporting no further issues. Alex allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but the sense of unease remained. He had put his faith in the system, and it had performed, this time. But what would happen next? With each passing day, the mission became more of a personal journey for Alex. It wasn't just about proving his technology, it was about ensuring humanity's future. The gravity of what was at stake weighed heavily on him. Late one night, as Alex sat alone in the control room, staring at the data, Elon entered silently. The two men exchanged a look, one of mutual understanding. "You're doing great, Alex," Elon said quietly. "But you've got to let go of the fear. This is what we've been working toward. It's not just about you. It's about the future. You've already changed the world." Alex nodded, but deep down, he knew the biggest challenge was yet to come. Mars was still days away, and the real test of his quantum energy system would come when they had to deploy it in the harsh conditions of the Martian surface. Until then, Alex would keep watching the numbers, watching the energy fields, watching the future unfold. The spacecraft had now been in transit for over 2 weeks. The crew was beginning to feel the weight of their isolation as they neared the Martian atmosphere. The quiet hum of the ship, the endless expanse of space outside the windows, and the constant rhythm of life support systems had become the only constants in their existence. It was a surreal experience, one that Alex had envisioned countless times, but never truly understood until now. The team had settled into a routine, one punctuated by daily check-ins with SpaceX's control center. But even the most well-oiled machines, like the spacecraft itself, had to confront the inevitable unknowns. And now, it was time for Alex's invention to prove itself, not just in orbit, but on the surface of Mars. The quantum energy prototype had worked flawlessly in the safety of the spacecraft. The calibration had been fine-tuned to perfection, and the system had powered every aspect of the mission, from the engines to the life support systems. But Mars was an entirely different beast. The planet's thin atmosphere, extreme temperatures, and radiation were nothing like anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just a test of technology, it was a test of humanity's audacity to reach beyond the stars. "Alex, are you ready?" Elon's voice broke through Alex's thoughts as he stood in the control room, staring at the holographic map of Mars that had just appeared in front of him. Alex glanced up at the screen. The Martian surface was now visible through the ship's telescopic cameras. It was no longer just a distant dream, a speck on a map, but a vast, alien world that was now within reach. "I'm ready," Alex said, but even as he spoke the words, his heart raced in his chest. He couldn't afford to let his nerves show. Not now, not with everything riding on the success of the mission. "Good," Elon said, his voice calm but determined. "This is what we've been waiting for. We're going to land this ship and set up your system. You're not just testing technology, Alex. You're laying the foundation for humanity's future." The weight of Elon's words hit Alex harder than he expected. This wasn't just about him, or even about SpaceX. This was about something much bigger, the future of mankind. He was on the brink of creating a new era of space exploration, one that could take humanity beyond Earth to the stars. But first, they had to survive Mars. The descent into the Martian atmosphere was a carefully coordinated procedure. The crew had trained for every possible scenario, running simulations of landing, atmospheric entry, and even failure. But no amount of preparation could fully prepare them for the real thing. The ship entered Mars' thin atmosphere, the exterior shields glowing red as the intense friction heated them up. Alex watched the telemetry data closely, his fingers hovering over the emergency controls. This was the moment of truth. He couldn't afford any mistakes. "We're at 100 kilometers," the captain of the spacecraft called out. Preparing for atmospheric entry. The ship began to shake as the speed increased. Alex could feel the pressure build as the descent continued. "Stabilizing," the flight engineer reported, her voice steady but tinged with anxiety. "Energy levels are stable. The system is holding." Alex exhaled slowly. The quantum energy system had performed without issue so far. It was powering the ship's landing systems, adjusting for gravity fluctuations, and controlling the spacecraft's descent. But the real test was still ahead. They hadn't even hit the surface yet. "Approaching the landing site," the captain said, her voice sharp with focus. "We'll need to make a slight course correction. Energy systems are holding steady." Alex could feel the tension in the room intensify as the spacecraft dropped lower and lower. The ship's engines fired, slowing their descent, but Mars' gravity was less forgiving than Earth's. Every adjustment had to be precise. Then, just as they neared the surface, the unthinkable happened. A small asteroid, hidden in the Martian dust, came into their flight path. "Collision warning!" An alarm blared, and the ship jolted. Alex's heart leapt into his throat as the ship lurched violently. He instinctively reached for the control panel, his mind racing. They couldn't afford to lose control now. "Stabilize." Elon's voice came through the comms, commanding and calm. "Alex, recalibrate the energy system. Adjust the power flow to counter the gravitational shock." Alex's hands flew over the console, inputting commands at lightning speed. The quantum system was designed to adapt to dynamic changes in its environment, but this was a test it had never encountered. The energy drain from the asteroid's gravitational field was intense, but if Alex could realign the entanglement calibration, they might still be able to recover. Come on," Alex whispered to himself, his eyes flicking between the data streams. The ship's descent was slowing, but they were still too close to the surface. They needed more power. Suddenly, the readings on the quantum energy panel shifted. "Power surge detected," the flight engineer said. "We've regained control." Alex's breath caught in his throat as the ship stabilized. The energy surge was exactly what they needed. The quantum system had compensated for the gravitational anomaly, and the ship was now in a stable descent toward the Martian surface. A few heart-stopping seconds later, the spacecraft touched down with a gentle thud. The entire room exhaled as one. They had landed. Successfully. The landing was a success, but Alex's work wasn't finished. Now, they had to deploy the quantum energy system on the Martian surface. This was where the real test would come. Could the system handle the extreme conditions of Mars? Alex, Elon, and the rest of the crew suited up and began their descent to the surface. The dust swirled around them as they exited the spacecraft, stepping onto the reddish soil of Mars. The sight was breathtaking. The barren landscape stretched out in all directions, a silent witness to their historic arrival. They quickly moved to the landing zone where the energy system was to be deployed. The setup was complicated. Alex had designed a field generator that would tap into the quantum energy system and create a sustainable power source. But it had to be calibrated correctly, and it had to operate in an environment where nothing like it had ever been tested before. The first few hours were tense, with Alex and the engineers working furiously to set up the energy grid. The temperature was frigid, and the atmospheric pressure was barely enough to support life. Every piece of equipment had to be carefully placed and calibrated, and even the smallest malfunction could set them back months. "Energy systems are online," Alex called out after what seemed like an eternity. His fingers trembled as he typed in the final command. "Here we go." He hit the enter key. A soft hum filled the air as the system powered up, sending out an invisible wave of energy. The data immediately started coming in. "Energy levels are rising," the technician reported. "We're getting a positive read from the grid. This is it. We have power." A cheer erupted from the crew. They had done it. The first ever sustainable power system on Mars was up and running. Alex could hardly believe it. "Alex," Elon said, coming over to him. "You did it. You've just changed the future of humanity." Alex turned to look at the horizon. For the first time in his life, he He didn't feel like just a boy who had an idea. He felt like a pioneer, a creator of futures. This was only the beginning. The Martian surface stretched out before Alex like a blank canvas, vast and empty, its red soil a silent witness to humanity's first step on the planet. The crew gathered around the quantum energy grid, watching as it hummed softly, sending its first pulses of energy into the Martian atmosphere. It was working. It was really working. Alex stood there, his hands trembling slightly, a mixture of awe and disbelief washing over him. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a victory for all of humanity. The impossible had been achieved. They had harnessed the power of quantum energy and made it work on Mars. But just as the realization began to sink in, a wave of emotion hit him. Years of hard work, sacrifices, failures, and doubts. All of it had led to this moment. The mission wasn't just about technology. It was about hope. It was about proving that mankind could survive beyond Earth's confines, that they could reach the stars. Alex, Elon's voice interrupted his thoughts. The older man was standing beside him, his face lit up with a rare, genuine smile. This is history. You did it. Alex glanced at Elon, his mentor, the man who had believed in him when no one else had. There was no hiding the weight of the moment now. The tension, the pressure, the sleepless nights, they were all worth it. But the road ahead was still uncertain. There was so much more to do. Mars was only the first step. Thanks, Elon, Alex said, his voice tight. He turned his gaze back to the energy system. We've done something incredible, but we're not done yet. Elon nodded. No, we've only just begun. But this is your legacy, Alex. For the first time, Alex allowed himself to smile. It felt foreign, almost surreal. The emotional toll of the past few days had drained him, and yet, standing there, on the surface of another planet, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For all the sleepless nights and stress, for all the struggles and failures, this was the moment that would define his life. This was what he was meant to do. But just as the crew started to relax, as they took in the grandeur of their achievement, an alert broke through the calm. Alex, the technician's voice crackled through his comms. We're getting an anomaly in the data coming from the energy grid. It's fluctuating more than we anticipated. There's a power drain in Sector 4. We need you to take a look. Alex's heart sank. Nothing had ever gone this smoothly. There was always something, always another test. I'm on it, Alex said, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. I'm heading to Sector 4 now. The walk to the energy grid took Alex a few minutes, the Martian dust crunching beneath his boots as he moved with purpose. His mind raced. Could it be a simple glitch? The system had been running so smoothly. But Mars wasn't Earth. Everything about the environment here was alien to their technology, and something unexpected was always lurking. When Alex arrived at Sector 4, he was met by two engineers who were already analyzing the data streams. They pointed to a readout on the monitor that showed a sharp dip in the energy levels. The drain wasn't catastrophic, but it was significant enough to warrant concern. I don't understand, one of the engineers said, his voice tinged with frustration. Everything was fine just a few minutes ago. This wasn't predicted. Alex frowned, staring at the data. It didn't make sense. The quantum energy system was designed to be adaptive, resilient. And yet, something was pulling power away from the grid. We need to figure out what's causing this, Alex said, his mind already working through possible scenarios. Could be an external interference or a flaw in the calibration. Let's check the quantum field alignment again. It could be reacting to something in the Martian atmosphere. They spent the next few hours troubleshooting, checking the energy field, recalibrating the entanglement matrix, and running simulations. The power drain persisted, though, and as Alex analyzed the data further, his unease grew. There was something that didn't add up. Alex, there's something you need to see. The technician's voice was strained now. We've detected an anomaly near the southern hemisphere of Mars. It's not a natural phenomenon. Something's altering the energy flow. Alex's heart skipped a beat. An anomaly? What do you mean, something's altering the flow? Alex asked, his pulse quickening. We don't know yet, the technician replied, but we've got a reading. It's unlike anything we've encountered. The energy signatures are erratic. It's coming from a region near the Tharsis volcanic plateau. Elon's voice came through the comms, calm but sharp. Alex, this could be huge. I need you to investigate. We don't know what we're dealing with, but if something's interfering with our energy system this early, it could jeopardize the mission. Alex nodded, his mind already racing. The Tharsis Plateau was one of the largest volcanic regions on Mars, and it had always been a subject of interest to scientists. But an energy anomaly? This wasn't just a malfunction. It was something far more intriguing and potentially dangerous. Let's suit up, Alex said, his voice steady. We're going to investigate. The crew quickly assembled, donning their spacesuits and preparing for the mission. The uncertainty of what lay ahead gripped them all, but there was no turning back now. The energy grid was one thing, but this anomaly, it had to be understood. The future of the mission could depend on it. Alex and a small team boarded the rover, setting their sights on the distant Tharsis Plateau. As they drove across the dusty Martian landscape, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were about to encounter. The power drain was no longer the only issue. Now, they were dealing with something unknown. The ride was long and dusty, the barren landscape of Mars stretching out in every direction. There was something eerie about the silence that enveloped them, broken only by the hum of the rover's engines and the static crackling over their comms. The plateau loomed ahead, its jagged peaks casting long shadows over the Martian plains. "We're approaching the site," one of the engineers said, glancing at the readings on his tablet. "The anomaly's center is just beyond that ridge." Alex's gut twisted. The closer they got, the more intense the readings became. Whatever was causing the disruption in the energy system, it was centered right here. When they reached the ridge and crested it, the view before them was nothing short of jaw-dropping. In the distance, a massive, swirling vortex of energy appeared to be emanating from the ground itself, pulsing with an almost unnatural light. The air crackled with an electrical charge, and the power drain Alex had been monitoring now seemed trivial in comparison. "This is unbelievable," Alex whispered, his voice barely audible. A strange hum filled the air, and the anomaly intensified. As Alex and the crew watched, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Something was awakening on Mars. The moment the energy vortex appeared, everything changed. Alex stood frozen, his breath shallow as he stared at the swirling phenomenon before him. The anomaly in the distance pulsed with an otherworldly energy, a swirling maelstrom of light and shadow that seemed to breathe with life. His team, equally stunned, gathered around him, eyes wide with disbelief. "This is impossible," one of the engineers muttered, clutching his scanner as if the device itself could offer an explanation. Alex's mind raced. The anomaly was unlike anything he had ever encountered, not just in terms of energy signatures, but in its sheer presence. It felt alive. It wasn't just an energy drain or a glitch in the system. It was something far more profound, and possibly far more dangerous. "We need to get closer," Alex said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. He didn't wait for a response. The rover's engines hummed to life as he pressed the accelerator. The team scrambled to get into position, adjusting their gear and calibrating their instruments. Their faces were a mixture of awe and fear as they watched the energy field grow larger, its presence overwhelming the Martian landscape. It wasn't just a vortex. It was radiating energy in every direction, twisting the air around it, distorting the magnetic field of Mars. The rover's systems flickered slightly, as if protesting the force they were driving toward. "What do you think it is?" Elon's voice came through on Alex's comms. "We're tracking your position from here, but we're not picking up anything like this in our data logs. It's off the charts." "I don't know, Elon," Alex replied, his fingers gripping the controls, "but it's affecting our systems. We can't be sure of anything until we're closer." The rover crested the next hill, and the anomaly became even more visible. The swirling light was emanating from the very ground, almost as if Mars itself was alive, pulsating, breathing, and responding to an unseen force. Alex could see the disturbance rippling through the Martian atmosphere, the air around it vibrating with a strange energy. They approached cautiously, their sensors pinging wildly as they closed the distance. The closer they got, the more intense the readings became. Every meter brought them closer to something they couldn't explain. "This is it," Alex said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're almost at the center." As they came within a few hundred meters of the anomaly, the rover's systems began to behave erratically. Alex's screen flickered, then went black. He quickly tapped the display, trying to reboot the controls. "We've lost connection," one of the engineers reported, his voice strained. "The power's being drained. The rover's not responding." Alex's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a simple power drain. The anomaly had begun to interfere directly with their equipment. It was as if it was drawing the energy from everything around it, pulling it into itself. "Stay calm," Alex said, trying to keep his composure. He was used to high-stakes situations, but this was different. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. "We need to get out of the rover and get a better visual." The crew hesitated. The vortex was powerful, too powerful to be taken lightly. But there was no time for indecision. The success of the entire mission was on the line, and they couldn't afford to sit back and watch this anomaly take over. Alex and the team disembarked from the rover, stepping out onto the red Martian soil. The air was heavy with static, the ground beneath them vibrating faintly as they moved closer to the source of the disturbance. Alex glanced back at the rover. It was still there, but its once powerful engines were silent. The entire vehicle was now just a shell, drained of power. "Alex, you need to see this," one of the engineers called from the edge of the field. Alex turned and jogged over. What he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. At the heart of the anomaly, where the swirling vortex seemed to pulse and flicker like a storm in a bottle, something was emerging from the ground. It wasn't a physical object, at least, not one they could easily identify. It was more like a distortion in the fabric of reality itself. The energy was bending the space around it, creating strange geometries in the air that made it hard to focus. But there, in the center of the disturbance, Alex saw something unmistakable. A figure, a humanoid shape. It wasn't human. It wasn't even Martian. But it was there, standing tall, made of swirling energy that seemed to shift and twist with every blink of the eye. It was both formless and defined, its outline flickering with glowing tendrils of light that radiated from its core. The figure had no face, no identifiable features, but its presence was unmistakable. It felt as though it was watching them. It was aware of them. Is that real?" Another engineer whispered, his voice shaky. Alex couldn't speak. The sight was beyond anything he had ever expected. A life form, or an intelligence, manifesting through some kind of energy anomaly. Was this what Mars had been hiding all along? The figure slowly lifted its arm, and for a brief moment, it looked as though it was reaching out to them. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the energy within the vortex surged, creating a shockwave that sent Alex and the team stumbling backward. "Everyone, get back to the rover. Now!" Alex shouted, his instincts kicking in. But before they could retreat, the energy field exploded outward, sending a pulse that hit them with the force of a freight train. Alex felt himself being thrown to the ground as the air around him crackled with an intense electrical charge. His suit's sensors screamed in his ear, warning him of the rising radiation levels. The figure in the center of the vortex shimmered once more before dissipating, vanishing as if it had never been there at all. The energy wave, too, faded just as quickly, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Alex struggled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and his suit was glowing with residual energy. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, looking around at his crew. Everyone was shaken, but none appeared to be injured. Still, the sense of unease lingered. Whatever they had just witnessed, it was far beyond anything they had ever expected. "Alex, what just happened?" one of the engineers asked, his voice trembling. "Was that a form of intelligence? A life form?" "I don't know," Alex admitted. His mind was still racing, trying to process the impossible. The figure, the pulse of energy, the strange distortion. It all felt like a message, like Mars itself was trying to communicate with them. But how? And why now? "We need to get back to the rover and report this," Alex said. "We need to understand what we just saw and what it means for us, for the mission, and for humanity." As the team slowly made their way back to the rover, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous had just occurred. The discovery of the anomaly wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a challenge, a warning from the very planet they had come to conquer. Mars wasn't just a barren wasteland. It was alive in ways they couldn't yet understand. And as they boarded the rover and began the long journey back to the spacecraft, Alex knew this was just the beginning. They had come for knowledge, for progress, but they had found something far more profound, something that would change everything they knew about life, the universe, and their place in it. Whatever had awakened on Mars, it was only the beginning of something far greater. The ride back to the rover was tense, the weight of what they had just experienced hanging heavily in the air. Alex couldn't shake the image of the energy figure, the way it had appeared, almost as if it were watching them, waiting for them. It had been a surreal moment, one that defied logic and explanation. But there was no time to waste on doubts. They needed answers. Once inside the rover, the team quickly began recalibrating their equipment, trying to get their systems back online. The energy pulse had drained almost all their power reserves, and the rover's instruments were still malfunctioning. But Alex was determined. He couldn't let the anomaly slip through their fingers. If there was something out there, something ancient or powerful, they needed to understand it. Alex, one of the engineers, said, his voice shaky but resolute, "We're getting some strange feedback from our sensors. The readings, they're unlike anything we've ever encountered." Alex glanced at the monitor. The readings were indeed strange. Energy levels fluctuated wildly, the data skipping across the screen like a heartbeat. The pattern, however, was too irregular to make sense of at first glance. Alex's mind raced. "We need more data," he said, trying to remain calm despite the tension in the rover. "We're not leaving here until we understand what we saw and what that energy was." As they trekked back to the main habitat, Alex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of urgency. They had just uncovered something that could change everything: the nature of life, the future of exploration, and perhaps even humanity's place in the universe. And yet, all they had were questions. The figure, the energy, the strange behavior of the atmosphere. It was all so alien, so different from anything they had ever been prepared for. The anomaly was more than just a technical issue. It was a glimpse into something far beyond their comprehension. Back at the base, Alex and the team rushed to their lab, where a swarm of scientists was already awaiting them. Elon had arrived shortly after their return, his presence a quiet reassurance amidst the chaos. "Elon," Alex said as he approached, "you need to see this." Elon's eyes narrowed as he scanned the screens, taking in the erratic data. "It's not just interference," Elon muttered. "It's like it's communicating." Alex finished the thought. "That's what I think it was. That figure, it wasn't just a distortion. It was a response. We were there, and it reacted. It's not a glitch. It's something much deeper." The team exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to believe it or not. But Alex could feel it in his gut. The anomaly wasn't random. It was alive in some way, sentient or aware, and it was aware of their presence. "We need to go back," Alex said suddenly. The decision was impulsive, but he knew it was the only option. They had to understand what Mars was trying to tell them. Elon looked at him, hesitation flickering in his eyes. "Are you sure? After what happened, it's too risky. That pulse almost fried your systems. We don't know what we're dealing with." "I know," Alex replied, his voice steady but insistent. "But we can't just walk away. We're on the verge of something enormous here. If we leave it alone, we might never get another chance." Elon was silent for a moment, weighing the risks. Then he nodded slowly. "I agree, but we need a plan. We're going back prepared this time. Full suits, additional shielding, and all the equipment we've got. No more taking chances." The team worked quickly, assembling the necessary gear. They would approach the anomaly more cautiously this time, equipped with a new set of instruments to measure the strange energy and to protect themselves from another potential pulse. But as they suited up, Alex's mind kept returning to that image. The figure, the feeling that it had been watching them, waiting for something. The journey back to the Tharsis Plateau felt even more tense than before. The landscape was eerily silent, the only sound the crunch of their boots against the Martian soil and the hum of the rover's engines. It was as though the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. As they neared the anomaly's location, Alex's breath caught in his chest. The air felt different, charged. The ground trembled faintly beneath them, a low vibration that seemed to echo deep within the planet itself. It was the same sensation they had felt earlier, but more intense now. "There it is," one of the engineers said, pointing ahead. The vortex was visible once again, this time even more vibrant, more alive. The swirling energy looked almost as though it had solidified, with streaks of bright white and electric blue pulsing from its core. But the closer they got, the more Alex realized something had changed. The anomaly was no longer just a pulse of energy. It had a form, a presence that was unmistakable, as if it were waiting for them. The figure had returned, its outline shimmering at the center of the vortex, its presence undeniable. "Stay alert," Alex said to the team as they disembarked. The rover was parked a safe distance away, and they would have to approach on foot. "Keep your distance until we know what we're dealing with." They moved forward slowly, the air thick with static. Each step they took felt heavy, as though the ground itself was resisting their progress. As they neared the center, the vortex seemed to become more concentrated, the energy intensifying. Alex's heart raced as he stepped into the epicenter of the energy field. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air crackled around him, sending a shock through his suit. His instruments began to beep wildly, and the temperature around him shifted rapidly. "We're inside," he said, his voice tense. "The field stronger than before. This is it." And then, just like before, the figure appeared. But this time, it was different. It wasn't simply a formless mass of energy. It had structure, detail. It was humanoid in shape, but its body seemed to be made from the same swirling energies that powered the anomaly. Light danced around it, casting strange shadows on the ground. Alex took a step forward, his voice barely a whisper. What are you?" For a moment, nothing happened. The figure remained still, its glowing form undulating slightly, like a liquid caught in a moment of suspended animation. Alex's heart beat faster, his entire body vibrating with the energy that pulsed around them. Then, without warning, the figure lifted its hand once more, this time pointing directly at Alex. The air around him grew heavier, and he felt a sudden jolt in his chest. His heart raced, and his body felt as though it were being pulled in two directions at once. The energy was interacting with them, in ways they couldn't fully understand. "Alex!" one of the engineers shouted, but his voice sounded muffled, as though it were coming from a great distance. The figure's hand lowered, and the ground beneath Alex's feet began to tremble. A deep rumble filled the air, and Alex could feel the planet itself shifting. And then, in a voice that was not spoken but felt deep in their minds, the figure said one word. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even Martian. It was something ancient, something older than anything Alex had ever imagined. It was a warning, or a command. Before Alex could react, the energy vortex surged one last time, sending out a pulse so powerful that it nearly knocked them off their feet. The figure's form began to dissipate, melting back into the swirling energy, vanishing into the ether. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what the figure had meant. Remember what? What had it been trying to tell them? "Alex, we need to go," Elon's voice crackled over the comms. "The field is destabilizing. We've got to get out of there now." Shaken but determined, Alex nodded. "Get to the rover. We're leaving." As the team began to retreat, Alex couldn't help but feel that the encounter had only just begun. Mars was alive, and it had just sent them a message. The return to base felt like a long, somber journey. The silence in the rover was oppressive, with every creak of the vehicle's wheels and the hum of the engines amplifying the weight of what they had just encountered. Alex sat at the front, staring out into the barren Martian landscape, but his mind was far from the red dust and the distant peaks. His thoughts kept circling back to that one word the energy being had spoken. What did it mean? Who, or what, had left that message for them? The encounter had been brief, but its impact was undeniable. The energy vortex, the figure that seemed both alien and ancient, the pulse of energy that had shaken them to their core. It all felt like a puzzle, one that Alex wasn't sure he was equipped to solve. Yet, deep down, he knew he couldn't walk away from it. "We need to figure out what it meant," Alex said, breaking the silence as he turned to Elon, who had been quietly sitting in the back. "That message, it's like it's been waiting for us." Elon didn't respond immediately. He was still processing everything that had happened. For all the risks they had taken to get here, to Mars, they had never expected this. The sheer scale of the anomaly and the intelligence it seemed to hint at was overwhelming. "I agree," Elon finally said, his voice steady. "We're on the brink of something monumental. But we need more data, Alex. We need to understand the context. We need to know if this entity, whatever it is, has been here for a long time, or if it's something new, something connected to Mars itself." Alex nodded. It made sense. They had the technology to explore the surface, to dig into the planet's history, but they had never prepared for something like this. This wasn't a discovery of rock and mineral deposits. This wasn't about finding water beneath the surface or discovering life in the form of bacteria. This was something far deeper, and Alex knew that they couldn't ignore it. "Okay," he said. "Let's go back to the archives. I need everything you've got, any research on Mars, ancient civilizations, anything that could explain what we saw. The data we've collected so far doesn't even begin to cover it." Elon's eyes sharpened. "I'll get the team on it. We'll scour every report, every piece of research we've gathered on Mars over the years. If there's anything that ties into what we're seeing, we'll find it." Later that evening, the base was alive with activity. Alex, along with his team of engineers and scientists, worked tirelessly to comb through every piece of data they had accumulated from their mission so far. Mars had always been a puzzle, but now it felt like they had stumbled upon a hidden room within a much larger mystery. Elon joined them in the main command center, pacing back and forth as he reviewed reports. The dim light of the monitors reflected off his face, casting deep shadows. His mind, always working at lightning speed, was already processing the new possibilities. "There's got to be something," Elon muttered, as his eyes scanned through a file labeled Historical Mars Exploration, "something in these records that ties into what we saw." Alex's own thoughts were swirling in the same direction. They had to dig deeper, into ancient records, perhaps even beyond human knowledge. Could Mars have had an ancient civilization? One that had left behind a message, something lost to time but still waiting to be discovered? "Elon, do you remember the old missions?" Alex asked, breaking the silence again. "The ones that speculated about Martian ruins and possible ancient life forms? The ones dismissed as fantasy?" Elon stopped pacing and turned toward Alex, his expression grim. "Of course, but we dismissed them for a reason. The evidence was thin at best. A few broken artifacts, some odd symbols, but nothing concrete. They were theories, not facts. But what if there was something to those theories?" Alex pressed. "What if this anomaly we saw is part of something bigger? Something that was here long before we ever stepped foot on Mars?" Elon stared at him for a moment, his mind clearly working through the implications. "If you're right, if there's more to Mars than we thought, then this is bigger than any of us could have imagined." Just then, one of the engineers, Maria, rushed over to Alex's station, her face pale. "Alex, you need to see this." Alex stood up, his heart rate quickening. "What is it?" "We found something. It's an old transmission. One of the probes sent it back decades ago, and we missed it. It's a coded message, buried deep in the data, but we think it might be related to the anomaly we just encountered." Elon and Alex exchanged a look. For years, they had received thousands of pieces of data from Mars, routine surveys, atmospheric readings, mineral composition reports, but no one had ever suspected that there might be a message buried in the noise. "Show me," Alex said, his voice tense. Maria ran a few commands on her console, and the screen lit up with a stream of data. As the code filtered through, Alex and Elon watched in disbelief as the message began to take form. It was fragmented, just like the encrypted data often was, but some of the words stood out. "Echoes, the gatekeeper. Ancient ones, remember?" Alex's breath caught. It was the same word, The same message that the energy figure had spoken on the surface. "Remember, Elon, this is it," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is the key." Elon leaned in, studying the data carefully. "We need to decode the rest of this. But this changes everything. It's not just a coincidence. The message we heard on Mars, it's connected to something much older. Something that's been buried here, maybe for millennia." The implications of this were staggering. Mars was no longer just a target for colonization and resource extraction. It had become a repository of ancient secrets, perhaps the remnants of a civilization that had long since vanished. But why had it been hidden? Why had this message, this warning, been left for them to find? "We need to get to the site of the anomaly," Alex said, his voice resolute. "This isn't just a phenomenon. It's a doorway, a gateway to something we don't understand yet, but we have to uncover it." The next day, after all the data had been analyzed and their plan for exploration had been refined, the team prepared to return to the site of the anomaly. This time, they came armed with new knowledge and new questions, ready to confront whatever lay hidden beneath the surface. As they journeyed back to the plateau, Alex's thoughts kept returning to the cryptic message from the transmission. The gatekeeper. What did it mean? Was there truly a hidden force, a protector or a guardian, watching over the secrets of Mars? And most importantly, what did Mars want them to remember? It was a question that gnawed at him, one that Alex knew they could not ignore any longer. As they neared the site once again, the feeling of anticipation in the air was palpable. The rover's engines hummed steadily as it crested the final hill before the anomaly's location. But this time, something felt different. The air was still charged with energy, but now it was more deliberate, like something was waiting for them. The anomaly stood before them, its swirling lights more intense than before, but now there was a sense of focus to it, as if the vortex was aware of their return. And then, just as they reached the site, Alex saw it again, the figure. It was standing there, at the center of the energy vortex, its form shimmering with intensity. "Remember," the figure spoke again. The same voice, the same deep, resonant sound. It was both a command and a plea. And this time, Alex understood. Mars wasn't just calling them to explore. It was calling them to learn, to uncover the lost history that had been hidden beneath its surface. The figure wasn't just a manifestation of energy. It was a guide, a gatekeeper to the ancient secrets of the planet. "Remember," the figure repeated, as the vortex intensified around them. And in that moment, Alex realized the truth. Mars wasn't just a destination. It was a message, waiting for humanity to understand. The moment the figure spoke, "Remember," the air around Alex and his team seemed to shift. It wasn't just the charged energy of the anomaly anymore. It was as if the entire landscape was holding its breath. For a second, everything stood still, frozen in time. The energy pulse intensified. The vortex at the center of the anomaly swirled more violently, and the ethereal figure began to pulse with light. The air crackled with a kind of hum, like the very fabric of Mars was alive. Alex's heart raced, his mind spinning as the words of the figure reverberated through his chest. There was a power in that word, a weight that was far heavier than any message he had ever received. It was as though the planet itself was sending out a call, one that he couldn't ignore. The figure, part humanoid, part energy, was standing at the center of the swirling mass, its glowing body flickering like a star that hadn't fully ignited. It was a being of pure energy, and it was waiting for them to understand something. "Alex," Elon's voice crackled through the comms, breaking the eerie silence. "We need to be careful. That vortex is still unstable. We don't fully know what's happening here, or what that figure is capable of." Alex nodded, but his eyes never left the figure. The creature seemed to be waiting, watching, as if expecting them to take the next step. The team gathered around him, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough anymore. This was something far beyond their comprehension. "Remember," Alex whispered, as if trying to unlock the meaning behind the word. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the vortex began to pulse, sending ripples of energy that shot through the air. It was subtle at first, but gradually, the pulses became stronger. The figure's form seemed to dissolve and reassemble itself, its features shifting as if it were made of liquid light. Alex stepped forward, his legs heavy but determined. He reached out with a trembling hand toward the figure, feeling an inexplicable pull. As his fingers neared the energy field, a flash of brilliant light exploded in front of him, and a voice, not human, not mechanical, but somehow both, echoed inside his mind. The voice wasn't hostile, but it wasn't comforting either. It was both a warning and an invitation. Alex's heart hammered in his chest as the realization hit him. This wasn't just a message. It was a challenge, a test. Alex, get away from it. Elon's voice came through again, sharp with urgency. But Alex was frozen. His entire body seemed to hum with the energy from the vortex. It wasn't just around him. It was inside him. Every cell in his body vibrated with something ancient, something familiar. It was like a distant memory calling him home, though he couldn't fully grasp what it was. The world around him blurred, and for a moment, he was no longer standing on the surface of Mars. He was somewhere else, somewhere distant. His mind raced, caught in a vision that defied time and space. The landscape was stark, deserted, but there was something familiar about it. He saw massive structures rising from the dust, ruins, ancient and worn by time. In the distance, the sky was darker, not the red hue of Mars, but something deeper, something otherworldly. Alex's heart pounded as he recognized the symbols etched into the walls of the ruins. They were the same as the ones that had appeared in the transmission. In that moment, everything became clear. The ruins were not just artifacts. They were a warning, a reminder of something that had once existed here, something far older than humanity. A figure appeared in the distance, tall, ethereal, like the one Alex had seen in the vortex, but this time, it was more solid, more real. It raised its arm toward him, and Alex felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. He had seen this being before. This wasn't a random entity. It was something from the past. The figure's voice echoed in his mind again. Remember? Alex tried to speak, but his words didn't come out. He was trapped in the vision, pulled toward the figure with an irresistible force. The vision blurred again, and Alex was suddenly pulled back to reality. He staggered back, gasping for breath as he was jolted back into the present. The figure in the vortex was still there, but the energy surrounding it had changed. It was no longer just chaotic and random. It was focused, purposeful. Alex, Elon shouted. What happened? You were gone for a second. We lost your signal. Alex blinked rapidly, his mind still reeling from the vision. He could barely comprehend what he had seen. The past calls to you. You are the keepers of the future. The words echoed in his mind. I saw something, Alex said, his voice hoarse. The figure, it's not just a being of energy. It's connected to something ancient, a civilization that existed here long before us. The team looked at him, stunned and confused. What do you mean, Alex? Maria asked, her voice full of uncertainty. The ruins, Alex said, trying to steady his breathing. There are ruins, ancient structures hidden beneath the surface of Mars. The figure, it's part of that. It's not just a warning. It's a message from the past, from the keepers of Mars. Elon's eyes widened in realization. You're saying this figure, this gatekeeper, is somehow tied to an ancient civilization? But why now? Why are we seeing it? I don't know, Alex admitted, his mind still spinning, but I think we've just scratched the surface. We need to dig deeper. Mars isn't just a barren planet. It's a graveyard of a civilization that was once far more advanced than we are. The figure, its presence here, it's a sign that whatever happened in the past, it's not over. It's still alive. Elon turned to the rest of the team, his voice firm. We need to get to the bottom of this. Alex is right. Mars has secrets, and it's time we uncover them. The team worked swiftly, gathering their equipment and preparing to descend into the plateau where the anomaly had appeared. The ruins Alex had glimpsed in his vision might still be buried beneath the surface, but they were no longer just a legend or theory. The energy pulse from the anomaly was a direct link to the past, and if they could harness it, they might be able to unlock the true history of Mars. As the team made their way to the base of the plateau, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of destiny. The figure, the message, the ruins, it was all connected. And he was certain that whatever they discovered down there would change everything humanity thought it knew about the Red Planet. Mars was waiting to reveal its secrets, and the gatekeeper was still watching. The decision was made. The team would go deeper, literally and figuratively, into the heart of Mars to uncover what had been hidden beneath the surface for millennia. The gates of the past were now open, and the key was within their grasp. But as Alex and his team descended the steep incline of the plateau, there was no sense of triumph. Instead, a heavy silence hung over them, as if the planet itself was watching and waiting. Alex led the team, his heart pounding in his chest with each step. The landscape ahead was desolate, a barren wasteland of cracked red earth and jagged rock formations. Yet, beneath all the dust and debris, he could feel that something ancient, something vital, was buried there, just out of sight. The vortex from the anomaly pulsed faintly in the distance, like a heartbeat beneath the planet's skin, and Alex knew it was pulling them towards something far greater than any of them could have anticipated. Elon was beside him, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a rare intensity. His eyes were focused ahead, not just on the task at hand, but on the horizon, where the strange disturbance they had encountered loomed like an invitation. "We need to be careful," Elon said, his voice low but firm. "Whatever this is, it's not just about technology. It's about understanding. We're dealing with something older than humanity." Alex nodded, knowing that Elon was right. The stakes had grown exponentially since their first discovery. What had once been a quest for knowledge had now become a mission to unlock the deepest secrets of Mars, and perhaps, to understand the very nature of life itself. The rest of the team followed closely behind, their expressions a mixture of determination and trepidation. The rover, a heavy, multi-wheeled machine built for extreme terrain, was parked a few hundred meters away. It would be their lifeline for getting back to base, but for now, they were on foot, using the compact, high-powered scanners they had developed for just this sort of task. They reached a narrow canyon in the plateau, its jagged walls rising high on either side, casting long shadows across the ground. The ground here was uneven, and the temperature had dropped, though it was still far from freezing. "There's something under this canyon," Maria, the lead engineer, murmured, her scanner whirring as she knelt to examine the readings. Alex glanced at her. "What do you mean? What are you picking up?" "There's a structure, something made of metal," Maria replied, her brow furrowed. "Not like anything we've ever seen. It's buried deep, but I can tell it's there." Elon moved forward, stepping closer to the edge of the canyon. "A structure? You mean something that predates human history?" Maria didn't answer immediately. She was too absorbed in the readings on her device, but the weight of her words hung in the air. This was no ordinary discovery. This wasn't just a metal fragment or a rusted part of a failed mission. This was evidence of something far more sophisticated and far more ancient. "Do we have any idea what it is?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with anticipation. Maria shook her head. "Not yet, but it's enormous. Whatever it is, it's far too large to be a simple piece of debris. This could be a remnant of the civilization we've been searching for." A hush fell over the team as the significance of her words sunk in. If this truly was a remnant of an ancient Martian civilization, it would rewrite everything they thought they knew about the planet's history. Mars wasn't just a lifeless world. It had been home to an advanced civilization, one that had left behind its mark, buried, waiting to be found. Alex turned toward the rest of the group, his expression hardening with resolve. "We need to dig. Now." Hours passed as the team worked tirelessly to excavate the site. The sun was low on the horizon, casting a red-orange glow across the desolate landscape, but they didn't stop. Using advanced drills and excavation tools, they carefully peeled back layers of rock and dust, revealing the outline of a massive structure beneath the surface. The structure was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. It was metallic, but not like human technology. The surface was smooth, almost liquid in its finish, and covered in strange, geometric patterns. It pulsed faintly with energy, like a dormant machine waiting to be reawakened. Is that energy?" Maria asked, her voice filled with awe as she stepped closer to the structure. Her scanner flickered in her hand, picking up strange signals. Alex nodded, his stomach tightening. It's like the anomaly. It's connected to the same source. He approached the structure cautiously, feeling the hum of the energy reverberating in his bones. This was it. This was the key to everything. The figure, the strange vortex, the messages. It had all led them here, to this very moment. The structure seemed to respond to their presence, the patterns shifting, morphing before their eyes as though they were watching an intricate dance of light. For a second, Alex thought he saw movement within the metal, shapes twisting and reforming. It was as if the structure itself was alive, waiting for them to unlock its secrets. "We need to open it," Elon said, his voice steady but urgent. "Let's get the tools ready. We're about to break into something that could change everything." Maria's fingers hovered over the control panel of the drill, but she hesitated. "Are we sure? We don't know what we're dealing with. This structure could be far more advanced than anything we've ever imagined." "I don't think we have a choice," Alex replied. His voice was calm but resolute. "If we don't uncover it, we may never understand what we're dealing with. And if we don't act, someone else might." The team gathered around, their breath visible in the cold Martian air as they set to work. As the drill bit sank into the surface of the strange structure, the metal began to groan, and the energy field surrounding it flared briefly. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies, as though the structure was awakening from a long slumber. Maria glanced up at Alex. "It's working," she said, her voice tight with both excitement and fear. "But it's going to take some time." Hours turned into days as they worked relentlessly, excavating and carefully chipping away at the outer layer of the structure. It was clear now that this wasn't just a relic, it was a machine, or at least part of one, and it was far more intricate than anything humanity had ever designed. The walls of the canyon now glowed faintly with the energy emanating from the structure. Every few hours, they would pause to check their equipment, review data, and then continue the painstaking work. Despite the exhaustion, there was an undeniable excitement in the air. They were on the cusp of something monumental, but the unease never left them entirely. They didn't know what was inside. They didn't know what would happen once they fully opened it. Alex couldn't help but think back to the vision, the ruins, the gatekeeper, the feeling that something was watching, waiting. And then there was the word that haunted him. Remember? It wasn't just a command. It was a plea, a warning, a memory of something lost. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they had made enough progress to reach the inner chamber of the structure. As they removed the final layer of rock and dust, the air around them seemed to crackle with energy. The once dormant machine pulsed with life, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. He stepped forward, his breath caught in his throat, as a hatch slowly slid open, revealing a dark, chamber-like interior. The light from their equipment flickered across the walls, revealing more strange symbols and patterns. And in the center of the room, illuminated by an otherworldly glow, was an object. It was small, metallic, and shaped like a key. A key to what? The answer was still out of reach. But one thing was certain. They were about to find out. The moment Alex's eyes locked onto the small metallic object in the center of the chamber, his heart skipped a beat. It looked almost fragile, no larger than a human hand, and shaped like an ancient key. Its surface shimmered faintly in the dim light from their torches, reflecting a glow that didn't seem to come from any natural source. Instead, the glow seemed to emanate from within the key itself, pulsing with a rhythm that almost seemed alive. The team gathered around, their breaths held, as though they too recognized the weight of what they had uncovered. The key, whatever it was at the heart of the ancient Martian structure, placed with deliberate care at the center of the room. The object seemed to hum with the same energy that had surrounded the entire excavation site. The air was thick with anticipation. The hum of the structure had grown louder, almost vibrating through their bones. Elon stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the key. "This is it, isn't it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The gateway. The key to whatever Martian civilization left this behind." Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, He felt the overwhelming pull toward the object, as though it were calling to him directly. His mind raced, trying to piece together the clues they had gathered so far. The vision, the gatekeeper, the energy, the word, remember. Everything seemed to align now, as if this key was the final piece in a puzzle that had been waiting for centuries to be completed. Maria, the lead engineer, stepped up beside him. She was shaking, her hands still covered in Martian dust, but her eyes were wide with a mix of awe and excitement. We should study it first. We don't know what kind of energy it contains. If it's a key, there's no telling what it could unlock. Alex hesitated. Part of him agreed with her. They had no idea what kind of power the key might hold. But another part of him, an instinct he couldn't shake, urged him to reach for it, to take that first step into the unknown. I think it's meant to be touched, Alex said slowly, his voice filled with a sense of certainty he couldn't explain. We've been guided this far. Maybe this is the moment we've been waiting for. Elon glanced at him, the usual skepticism in his eyes replaced by a rare flicker of belief. All right, Alex, but be careful. With a deep breath, Alex extended his hand toward the key. The instant his fingers brushed against its surface, the hum in the chamber intensified, vibrating through the floor and into his very soul. His fingers tingled with an electric charge, and for a moment, everything around him blurred. The light from their torches flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows against the walls. Then, without warning, the key seemed to respond. A sudden burst of light erupted from it, flooding the chamber in a brilliant glow. It felt as though the very air had shifted, like the atmosphere had thickened in response to the energy being unleashed. The team gasped, stepping back instinctively, their eyes wide with shock. Alex stood frozen, his hands still resting on the key. He could feel something deep inside the structure beginning to wake, like a dormant giant stirring after eons of sleep. The floor beneath him trembled slightly, and the chamber seemed to breathe with new life. The symbols on the walls, which had once been etched in faint lines of glowing light, now shimmered brightly, shifting and moving as if they were alive. Alex's heart raced, and he felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest, as though the key had tapped into something deep within him. "Alex, pull your hand away," Maria shouted, her voice tinged with panic. But Alex didn't move. He couldn't. It was as if his body was no longer under his control, as if the key had a hold on him, urging him to remain connected. Then, suddenly, everything went still. The light dimmed. The rumbling in the ground ceased. The symbols on the walls stopped shifting, and in the silence that followed, a new sound filled the air, soft at first, like a distant whisper. But as it grew louder, Alex realized that it wasn't just a sound. It was a voice. "You have found the key," the voice said, echoing in Alex's mind. It was deep, resonating like the hum of the cosmos, and yet it felt intimate, as though it was speaking directly to him. The voice was neither human nor alien, but something beyond understanding. "Who are you?" Alex whispered, his voice trembling. "I am the gatekeeper," the voice answered. "I have watched. I have waited. And now, you have unlocked the path to the truth." The words hit Alex like a tidal wave, his mind scrambling to process what he had just heard. The gatekeeper, the same entity he had encountered in the vision, the same presence that had guided them to this moment. "What truth?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse. "The truth of Mars," the gatekeeper intoned. "The truth of your kind's legacy. The answer to your questions. It is all within your grasp." The room grew colder as the gatekeeper's voice filled every corner of the chamber. It was no longer just a whisper. Now, it felt like the voice was all around them, filling the entire space with its resonance. Alex could feel his pulse quicken as the weight of the gatekeeper's words sank in. "Are you saying, you know what happened here? You know what happened to the Martian civilization?" "Yes." The voice was calm, almost soothing, despite the gravity of the message. "The civilization you seek to understand was not destroyed. It was transformed." A wave of confusion swept over Alex and the team. "Transformed? What does that mean?" Elon asked, his voice steady but with an underlying sense of urgency. "It means that the Martians did not die. They ascended." The voice responded. They became something more. Their consciousness merged with the planet itself, and now they exist as one with Mars. The revelation struck Alex like a thunderbolt. He had always thought of Mars as a dead planet, a barren wasteland with only traces of ancient history. But this, the idea that the Martian civilization had somehow transcended physical form, changed everything. Mars was not dead. It was alive in ways humanity could never have imagined. The Martians are still here? Alex asked, struggling to make sense of the words. Yes, the voice answered again. Their knowledge, their essence, remains within Mars. You have awakened the first step to understanding. But beware, knowledge comes with a price. Before Alex could ask another question, the ground beneath him trembled again. This time, the energy felt darker, more intense, like a warning. The walls of the chamber seemed to shift once more, and Alex could see the faint outline of a doorway materializing in the far corner of the room. It was a portal, not made of stone or metal, but of light, a shimmering passage that seemed to lead beyond the physical realm. "Are you ready to know the truth?" the gatekeeper asked. "Or will you turn away from the path that has been laid before you?" Alex's breath caught in his throat. The moment of choice had arrived. He could step forward and face whatever came next, or he could retreat into the safety of the known world, abandoning the mystery of Mars and the gatekeeper's offer. But deep down, Alex knew there was no turning back. He had come too far, uncovered too many secrets. The key had chosen him, just as the gatekeeper had chosen to reveal the truth. He stepped toward the glowing portal, his decision made. "Yes," he whispered, his voice filled with a mix of fear and resolve. "I'm ready." The air in the chamber felt thick, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. The glowing portal in front of Alex shimmered like a mirage, a doorway not just to another place, but to another reality. The gatekeeper's voice still lingered in his mind, echoing its last, cryptic words. "I am the gatekeeper. I have watched. I have waited." Alex's heart was pounding in his chest as he took another step toward the portal, the swirling energy pulling at him like a magnetic force. He could feel the hum of the planet's energy vibrating through his body, as though Mars itself was alive and aware of his presence. Behind him, Maria, Elon, and the rest of the team stood frozen, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. No one moved to stop him. There was nothing left to say. They had reached this point together, and now Alex was the one to take the next step, alone but not alone. Elon spoke, his voice tense but steady. "Alex, are you sure? We don't know what's on the other side." Alex turned to look at him, his face filled with determination. "We've come this far. I can't turn back now. I need to know what happened here. I need to know what the gatekeeper is telling us." He faced the portal again, the swirling energy now a whirlpool of light and darkness. There was something indescribable about it, like the infinite void between stars, like the boundary between life and death. Without another word, Alex stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world around him exploded into light. For a brief moment, there was nothing but a blinding flash, as if Alex had been transported to the core of a sun. His body was weightless, as though gravity itself had forgotten him. The sensation was overwhelming, a strange mixture of exhilaration and fear, like falling through an endless void. But then, as quickly as it had started, the light receded, and Alex found himself standing on solid ground once more. He blinked rapidly, trying to adjust his eyes to the new surroundings. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. He was no longer in the Martian structure. Instead, he stood in a vast, open expanse. The sky above was not the red, dusty sky of Mars, but a swirling vortex of deep blues and purples, a kaleidoscope of cosmic colors that defied all logic. There was no sun, no stars, but a soft, ethereal light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The landscape around him was both familiar and alien. The ground beneath his feet was solid, but it pulsed with an energy he couldn't quite comprehend. The terrain was rocky, but the rocks were not of Mars. They were smooth, like polished stone, glistening under the strange light. Tall, jagged structures rose in the distance, not like mountains, but like spires reaching toward the sky. They were metallic, but not of any metal Alex had ever seen. Their surface shimmered with a soft, iridescent glow, like something both organic and synthetic. In the distance, he saw movement. Shapes, almost indistinguishable at first, began to take form. They were not human, nor were they Martian. They were something entirely different, an amalgamation of light and shadow, shifting in and out of visibility, as though they existed in multiple dimensions at once. A voice, the same deep resonance that had spoken to him before, filled his mind. "You have arrived." Alex's heart raced as he turned in every direction, trying to make sense of his surroundings. "Where am I?" he whispered aloud, his voice sounding distant in the vastness of the place. "You are within the Nexus," the voice replied. "The heart of Mars, the place where the essence of its people converges, the transition point between the physical and the metaphysical, the place where the Martian civilization ascended." Alex felt his legs tremble, the weight of the truth settling heavily on his shoulders. So, this is where they became one with the planet, where the Martians transformed. Yes, the voice was calm, but there was an underlying sadness to it. The Martians did not perish. They shed their physical forms, as you will shed yours, in time. The consciousness of their civilization now exists in harmony with the core of Mars. They are the planet, and the planet is them. A chill ran down Alex's spine. This was beyond anything he had imagined. The Martians had not died. They had transcended. They had become one with the very fabric of their world. But the question that burned in Alex's mind, the one question that he had to ask, broke free of his lips before he could stop it. What happened to them? Why did they do it? They saw their world dying. They saw the great storms, the loss of the oceans, the slow decay of their atmosphere. They realized they could not save their physical bodies, but they could save their minds. They chose to ascend, to merge with Mars, and become a part of the planet's consciousness. They gave up their bodies to preserve their knowledge, their culture, their essence. They became one with the planet's soul. Alex felt his breath catch in his chest. The weight of the Martian people's sacrifice hit him like a physical blow. They had chosen to leave behind their physical lives in order to preserve the soul of their civilization. They had become part of Mars itself, ensuring that their legacy would live on even if their bodies had turned to dust. "But why are we here?" Alex asked. "Why show us this?" There was a long pause, the silence heavy with meaning. "Because you are the inheritors. You are the ones who can unlock the potential of the knowledge we left behind. You are the ones who can save your world before it suffers the same fate as ours." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "Our world," he repeated. "Earth?" "Yes," the voice intoned. "Your world is at a tipping point. Your civilization stands at the edge of destruction, much like ours did. But you have the power to change your fate. You have the key." The words echoed in Alex's mind, and he felt the weight of them settle in the pit of his stomach. Earth was in danger. They had come to Mars searching for answers, but what they had uncovered was far greater than just the history of an ancient civilization. This was a warning, a call for help. The gatekeeper's voice continued, softer now, as if speaking from a great distance. "You must understand the lessons we learned. You must understand that the physical world is fleeting. Knowledge, consciousness, these are the things that matter. You must learn to transcend before it is too late." Alex's mind reeled. He looked around at the vast expanse, the towering spires, the shifting shadows, and he knew, deep in his bones, that he had been given a glimpse of something more profound than anything he had ever imagined. The Martian civilization had not just been advanced in technology. They had achieved a state of being that humanity could scarcely comprehend. They had transcended the physical, becoming part of something greater. But what did that mean for him, for the team, for Earth? The answers seemed just out of reach, like the distant horizon. He knew one thing for certain. The journey they had begun had only just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. "You must choose," the gatekeeper's voice said, as if reading his thoughts. "Will you remain in the physical world, or will you join us? The choice is yours." Alex felt a profound sense of peace wash over him, but also a sense of unease. He had been given a gift, but it came with a heavy price. The Martians had transcended, but to do so, they had given up everything they had once been. Was humanity ready to make the same choice? With a final, determined breath, Alex stepped forward into the unknown. The swirling vortex above Alex's head continued to pulse with energy, casting a soft, otherworldly glow over the landscape. The towering spires, the shifting shadows, and the vast, cosmic sky all seemed to draw closer, as though Mars itself was trying to communicate directly with him, urging him to understand the gravity of what he was witnessing. Alex stood in the center of this strange, ethereal realm, a place that felt neither entirely physical nor entirely metaphysical, like standing in the very heart of an idea. The Martian consciousness, the gatekeeper, had spoken, revealing truths about the rise and fall of a civilization that once thrived on Mars. They had transcended, shed their physical forms, and become one with the planet. It was an evolution, a choice made out of necessity to preserve the very essence of their existence as their world decayed. Now, Alex was faced with a decision that felt too immense for any one person to bear. Would humanity follow in the footsteps of the Martians, learning to transcend before it was too late? Or would they fall victim to the same destructive fate? He had always known that humanity's future was uncertain. Climate change, resource depletion, the constant threat of war. It was easy to see how Earth was heading toward its own reckoning. But to think that they might be on the brink of an existential transformation, of choosing to evolve beyond the physical world altogether, was a concept that defied everything Alex had ever believed. "What do you mean, join you?" Alex asked, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. He didn't expect an immediate response. The magnitude of the question seemed to hang in the air, unanswered for a moment. "You must understand," the gatekeeper's voice answered, filling the space around him with its rich, calming resonance. "We did not choose to die. We chose to evolve, to preserve our knowledge, our consciousness, beyond the limitations of the body. We became one with Mars because we understood that survival was no longer just about the physical. It was about the continuation of our essence, our knowledge, our legacy." Alex's mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of what the gatekeeper was saying. He had heard the stories of how Mars had once been a vibrant, thriving world, a place filled with oceans, forests, and cities. But over time, the climate had changed, the atmosphere had thinned, and the planet's resources had dwindled. The Martians had faced an existential crisis, just as humanity was facing now. But their solution was so much more profound than Alex could have imagined. They didn't try to rebuild their physical world. They gave up their physical existence entirely. "Are you saying that humanity should do the same? Give up our bodies? Transcend?" Alex asked, his voice almost trembling. The thought seemed impossible. It felt like something out of science fiction, a concept too vast and alien for anyone to truly understand. "The decision is not for me to make," the gatekeeper responded. "But the path is laid out for you. The knowledge we have left behind, the energy we have shared, can guide you. You have the potential to transcend, to evolve. But it is a difficult path, a path few will choose, for it requires letting go of the world you know." Alex stood there in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The Martians had chosen a path of ascension, but what would it mean for humanity? Could they truly walk away from the physical world, from the human experience? Could they really let go of everything they had built? Behind him, Alex heard footsteps. He turned to find Elon, Maria, and the rest of the team stepping into the expanse, their faces a mix of disbelief and awe. "Alex," Elon's voice broke through the silence. "What's going on? Where are we? What did you find?" Alex looked at his friends, the people who had shared this extraordinary journey with him. He could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the same confusion he felt. They had all come here seeking answers, seeking a glimpse of something beyond the human experience. But now that the truth was starting to unfold, it felt less like a revelation and more like a terrifying possibility. "We've found the truth," Alex said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Martians didn't die. They transcended. They shed their physical forms and became one with the planet. They gave up everything they were to preserve the knowledge of their civilization. The gatekeeper, the consciousness of Mars, it's all here, all around us." and it's offering us the same path. We could do the same. We could evolve beyond the physical. Maria's face twisted with a mix of disbelief and fear. You're saying we should give up our bodies? Stop being human? Alex nodded slowly, his mind still processing the enormity of the words. The Martians did it. They realized that their world was dying, and the only way to survive, really survive, was to transcend, to become more than just physical beings. They became part of Mars, and now they exist as energy, as consciousness. Elon crossed his arms, staring at the glowing, shifting landscape. But what does that mean for us? For Earth? Are you telling me that the only way to save our planet is to give up everything we are? Alex felt a wave of doubt wash over him. Elon was right to question it. How could anyone truly comprehend what it meant to transcend, to leave behind the physical world? The Martians had done it because they had no choice. Their world was dying. But Earth still had life, still had resources, still had time to change. Didn't they? I don't know, Alex admitted, his voice cracking. I don't know if we should do this, but I think we need to understand what they did. We need to learn from them before it's too late. This could be the answer to everything. Maria looked at him with concern. But what happens to us, Alex? What happens to the people left behind? If we transcend, what are we leaving behind? The gatekeeper's voice once again filled the space, deep and resonant, offering an answer that sent a chill through Alex's bones. You do not leave behind what you think you will. Transcendence is not the loss of self, but the expansion of it. The essence of who you are will persist, but in a form you cannot yet comprehend. The physical world will continue, but it will evolve. You will be a part of that evolution, as will Earth. Alex swallowed hard, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out at a vast unknown, unsure whether to leap or retreat. We have a choice, he said, his voice trembling. We can choose to stay the same, to keep fighting to preserve what we have, or we can choose to evolve. We can follow the path the Martians took, but it will require everything from us. We have to decide if we're ready for that. There was silence, a long, heavy silence. It was the silence of the unknown, the silence of choices that had no easy answers. Finally, Elon spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. What if the answer is somewhere in between? What if we don't have to choose between the physical and the transcendent? What if we can evolve, but still preserve what makes us human? Alex met Elon's gaze. The answer wasn't simple, but perhaps that was the key. Perhaps the path forward wasn't about choosing one or the other, but about finding a way to integrate the lessons of the past with the possibilities of the future. We'll figure it out, Alex said, his voice steadying. Together. And with that, the team stood together in the heart of Mars, staring into the unknown, ready to face the future, whatever it might bring. The vast, pulsating expanse of the Martian nexus felt like an ocean, endless and infinite. The shimmering structures in the distance seemed both near and far, like figments of a dream that flickered in and out of focus. It was hard to tell if time moved here, or if it had lost all meaning. The soft, ambient hum of the place filled the silence, vibrating through Alex's bones, settling deep into his psyche. He stood at the precipice of a decision that would not only shape his future, but the future of humanity. The Martians had chosen to transcend, but was that the path Earth needed to take? Was it really possible for humanity to evolve without losing everything it had worked for, without losing what it meant to be human? He glanced at Elon, Maria, and the rest of the team. Each face reflected the same confusion, the same uncertainty. The question loomed heavy in the air, unspoken yet understood. What comes next? Elon, Alex said quietly, his voice nearly lost in the hum of the Martian realm. Do you really think humanity can merge the physical and the transcendent? Can we really hold onto what makes us human while evolving beyond our physical forms? Elon took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the ethereal horizon. His hands were clasped behind his back, a stance that betrayed his own inner turmoil. I don't know, Alex. I think there's a middle ground. We don't have to give up everything to evolve. We can find ways to integrate the best of both worlds. The Martians didn't have that option. They were facing a dying world. We, on the other hand, still have time. Maria stepped forward, her brow furrowed in thought. But what about the people left behind? If we ascend, or evolve, does that mean we leave everyone else behind? What if not everyone can make that leap? We can't just walk away from Earth. Elon looked at her, his expression softening. We're not walking away, Maria. I believe we can find a way to bring the knowledge and energy of this place back to Earth. There's a lot here that we don't yet understand, but there's a chance it could change everything. How we interact with energy, with consciousness. The very fabric of reality. Alex's mind raced. The implications of Elon's words were huge, almost too big to fully grasp. Could they find a way to integrate Martian knowledge and consciousness without needing to sacrifice their humanity? Could they bring the lessons of transcendence back to Earth without losing everything they were? The possibilities were endless, but the risks were just as great. He turned back toward the shimmering portal, its edges glowing with a strange, inviting warmth. The gatekeeper had said they had a choice. The path of transcendence or the path of survival. But could there be a third option? Could humanity find a way to both survive and evolve? The question felt like an anchor, holding him in place, preventing him from moving forward or backward. The weight of the responsibility was overwhelming. You seek the middle path. The gatekeeper's voice echoed in his mind, as clear and resonant as before. It is not an easy path to walk. It requires understanding, balance, and great sacrifice. The knowledge you seek is here, but you must be willing to let go of what you think you know. Alex closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the words wash over him. Let go of what you think you know. It was the hardest part, wasn't it? The letting go. Human beings had always been tied to the physical. Our bodies, our senses, our emotions. Letting go of the certainty of the physical world meant embracing something far more fluid, more unknown. But the gatekeeper was right. The Martians had done it. They had let go of everything they thought they knew, and in doing so, they had transcended. They had become part of Mars, part of the energy of the planet. But they hadn't abandoned the essence of who they were. They had preserved it. It had evolved. He turned back to Elon, his mind clearer now, the weight of the decision lighter. We don't have to completely abandon the physical world, Alex said, his voice steady, even as the enormity of his words filled him with awe. But we do have to change the way we think, the way we see ourselves, and the way we see Earth. If we're going to evolve, we need to let go of the belief that the physical is the only reality. Elon's expression softened, his eyes widening with understanding. You're saying we can find a way to evolve without losing who we are? I think so, Alex replied. The Martians didn't just become part of Mars. They evolved into something new. Their consciousness, their knowledge, became one with the planet. But they didn't lose their essence. They became part of a greater whole. Maria stepped closer, her voice hesitant but curious. But how do we do that? How do we evolve without losing ourselves? Alex looked at the team, the question hanging in the air. It was one thing to understand the concept, but another to know how to actually make it happen. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I think we need to understand what they did. We need to access the knowledge they've left behind. There must be something here, something that can show us the way. The gatekeeper's voice filled the space once more, as if sensing their readiness. The knowledge you seek is already within you. You must learn to listen, to feel the pulse of the energy around you. The consciousness of Mars, the Martian legacy, is intertwined with this world. It is waiting for you to awaken it. Alex's heart raced as the words resonated in his chest. The knowledge was already within them. But what did that mean? How could they awaken it? Suddenly, a wave of energy surged through the ground beneath his feet. It started small, like a whisper, a pulse, but soon it grew, spreading outward, until it enveloped him completely. The air crackled with a new, unfamiliar energy, and Alex's skin tingled as if charged with electricity. In an instant, the world around him shifted. The Martian landscape disappeared, replaced by visions, flickering, shifting fragments of memories and knowledge. He saw glimpses of the Martian civilization, their cities rising and falling in harmony with the rhythms of the planet. He saw their struggle, the storms, the degradation of their world, and their eventual decision to transcend. But there was something else too, something more profound. He saw humanity, Earth, its rise, its struggles, its choices. And in the distance, he saw the threads connecting them, linking Mars and Earth in ways that Alex had never before imagined. The Martians had not just transcended. They had linked their consciousness with something greater, the universal flow of energy and knowledge that existed beyond planets, beyond stars. It was as if the entire universe was alive, pulsating with energy, and all they had to do was tap into it. It was waiting for them, waiting for Earth to awaken. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Alex standing in the Martian realm, his breath quick and shallow. The others were watching him, their faces full of anticipation. "I saw it," Alex whispered, his voice hoarse. "I saw how it works. Mars isn't just about transcending the physical, it's about connecting. Mars evolved because it became part of something greater, and we can do the same. We can tap into the universal energy, the flow of knowledge, but we have to learn how to listen." The vision Alex had experienced was still vivid in his mind, the after-effects lingering like the echo of a song half-remembered. He could feel the pulse of the energy around him, resonating in his very bones, like a frequency he had only just begun to tune into. The knowledge, the connection, was there, waiting. All he had to do was reach for it. Elon nodded, his face lighting up with understanding. It's all about connection. If we can learn to connect with that flow, we can transcend without losing what makes us human. Maria smiled, a spark of hope returning to her eyes. Then let's figure out how to do it. Together. The team stood in the heart of Mars, a place that had once been the home of an ancient civilization, but was now a beacon of hope. The knowledge of the past had been unlocked, and now it was up to them to use it. Together, they would awaken Earth's future. The vision Alex had experienced was still vivid in his mind, the after-effects lingering like the echo of a song half-remembered. He could feel the pulse of the energy around him, resonating in his very bones, like a frequency he had only just begun to tune into. The knowledge, the connection, was there, waiting. All he had to do was reach for it. As the team stood in the Martian expanse, the air crackling with a strange energy, they felt the shift too. It was subtle at first, a sense that something monumental was about to unfold. They had crossed a threshold, but where would it lead? Could they truly tap into the universal energy that had allowed the Martians to evolve? Or would they fail in the attempt, as so many civilizations before them had? Elon was the first to break the silence. He turned to Alex, his face reflecting a mixture of awe and excitement. "Alex, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. We've stumbled upon the ultimate discovery, the key to everything. If we can unlock this, we can save Earth and maybe even transcend ourselves." Alex nodded, still absorbing the implications. "It's not just about saving Earth, Elon. It's about connecting. It's about understanding that there's more than just the physical. The Martians didn't just survive. They became one with the energy of the universe. We can do the same, but we have to learn to listen first." Maria stepped forward, her voice filled with determination. "Then let's start listening. The knowledge is here. We can't waste any more time." With renewed resolve, the team began to focus on the energy around them. The Martian landscape seemed to shift again, and Alex felt it, the subtle hum that resonated beneath the surface of everything. It wasn't something they could see, but something they could feel. It was the flow of consciousness, the pulse of existence itself. The gatekeeper's voice, as steady and calm as ever, echoed in their minds. "To awaken, you must be still. To hear, you must listen not with your ears, but with your heart. The energy is within you, but it is also beyond you. It is the breath of the universe itself." Alex closed his eyes, following the gatekeeper's instructions. He focused not on the physical realm, but on the subtle vibrations beneath it. The hum of the planet, the deep, unspoken connection that bound all things together. At first, it was overwhelming. The flood of energy felt like a river too large to cross, a force too vast to contain. But as Alex relaxed into it, the sensation became less chaotic, more harmonious. He let go of his doubts, his fears, and allowed himself to sink into the flow. And then, like a sudden gust of wind, it clicked. He saw it, not with his eyes, but with his mind. His consciousness expanded. The threads of existence, the flow of energy, knowledge, and consciousness, were all connected, like an intricate web woven across time and space. He saw the past, the present, and the future, all interwoven into a single moment. He saw the Martian civilization, their rise and fall, their decision to evolve. He saw humanity, standing on the precipice of its own future, holding the key to its survival in its hands. It wasn't about transcending the physical form. It was about understanding that everything, every thought, every emotion, every action, was a ripple in that web. And the more they connected, the more they understood their place in the grand flow, the more they would evolve, not just as individuals, but as a species. The knowledge was there. The answers were within reach. Humanity had the potential to evolve, not by leaving behind their bodies or their humanity, but by becoming more than just physical beings. They could tap into the universal consciousness, becoming part of the very energy that sustained the universe. It was a choice, a path, a new way of being. Alex opened his eyes and looked around at his team. Their faces reflected the same awe and wonder that he felt. They had all seen it, felt it, in their own way. The moment had arrived. "We can do this," Alex said, his voice filled with quiet certainty. "We've found the way. It's not about losing who we are. It's about evolving, becoming part of something greater, something universal. We're connected to everything. We always have been. And now, we just have to learn how to harness that." Elon's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Alex, this is bigger than Mars. This is bigger than anything we've ever imagined. We have the knowledge now. We know what to do. This isn't just the future of Earth. It's the future of humanity itself. We have to share this with the world." Maria nodded, her eyes burning with the same intensity. "It's time. We've learned the truth. We've unlocked the key. Now we have to teach others how to awaken." But even as the words left her lips, Alex knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Sharing this knowledge wouldn't be easy. It would take time, patience, and understanding. People would resist, they would fear the change. It was a monumental shift in consciousness, and not everyone would be ready to embrace it. But they had no choice. They had seen the future, and it was theirs to shape. As the team prepared to leave the Martian Nexus, the gatekeeper's voice echoed once more in their minds, as though offering a final piece of wisdom. "The path ahead will not be easy. There will be resistance, doubt, and fear. But remember this: you are the ones who have awakened. And through you, others will awaken too. The flow of consciousness is not a destination. It is a journey. And the journey is just beginning." Alex took a deep breath and nodded. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they had the knowledge. They had the power to change the course of humanity's future. And that, in itself, was the greatest gift of all. They were ready. The journey home from Mars was unlike any the team had taken before. As they glided through the cosmos in their sleek spacecraft, Earth growing larger in the viewport, Alex couldn't shake the weight of what lay ahead. He had seen the future, had felt it, touched it, and yet it was still distant, like an intricate, unfinished painting. The picture was there, but the strokes of the brush still had to be laid out. Mars had given them a gift, knowledge, vision, and the key to a future beyond the limitations of their physical forms. But as the spacecraft hummed silently through space, Alex knew the real challenge had only just begun. "Do you think people will believe us?" Maria's voice broke through his thoughts. She sat beside him, her eyes reflecting a similar mixture of awe and concern. "They'll have to," Alex replied, his tone firm but not without hesitation. "We've seen what's possible. We know the truth. It's up to us to share it and to show the world that it's real." Elon, sitting at the control panel, glanced over his shoulder at them. His expression was a mixture of hope and resolve. "They don't have to believe us right away. Change is never easy. But it starts with the few who understand, and then it spreads. We can't wait for the world to be ready. We have to make it ready." His words had a certain weight to them, a quiet conviction that had always been Elon's signature. But Alex wasn't sure whether he was speaking to them or to himself. Elon had always been a man of big ideas, but this was different. This was more than launching a new technology or sending rockets to Mars. This was about shifting the very consciousness of humanity. And that, as Alex realized, would be no small task. The team arrived back on Earth, greeted with a flurry of media attention. The news outlets had been covering their mission to Mars for weeks now, speculating on what they had found and what their next steps would be. But none of the journalists or analysts could have anticipated what Alex, Elon, and Maria were about to reveal. They called for a global press conference, a moment to unveil what they had learned from the Martian civilization. Alex stood before the camera, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. His hand, almost of its own accord, brushed over the small device in his pocket, the one that would connect them all to the vast, interconnected knowledge they had uncovered. The energy they had felt on Mars wasn't just a feeling, it was real. And with the right tools, they could bring that energy to Earth. They could awaken humanity. In the weeks that followed, the world's reaction was a mixture of disbelief, curiosity, and cautious optimism. The press, which had initially been skeptical, began to cover the team's findings more seriously. Researchers and scientists pored over the data, trying to understand how the Martian knowledge could be applied to Earth. The more they uncovered, the more people began to ask questions. Big questions? What if we could harness the energy of the universe? What if we could evolve beyond our physical limitations? What if we could connect with one another on a level that transcended language, distance, and even time? Elon, Maria, and Alex worked tirelessly, using the tools and knowledge they had gathered on Mars to develop technology that could help humans tap into the universal consciousness. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, resistance from governments, and fear from those who didn't want things to change. But the seeds had been planted. The awakening had begun. The first breakthrough came when a group of scientists, guided by the team's insights, successfully created a device that could tune into the universal energy. It was a small step, but it was enough to prove that it was possible. It was enough to show that the Martian legacy wasn't just a story. It was a blueprint. Alex stood on the balcony of a building overlooking the city, watching the sunset as the world continued to change. It was hard to believe how far they had come, how much had been achieved in such a short time. But there was so much more to do. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Elon was right, Maria said, joining him on the balcony. We're not just changing Earth, we're changing humanity. Alex nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. Yeah, but we can't forget. This is just the beginning. The future is still unfolding. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex felt a surge of hope. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. The world was awakening, and together, they would shape it. The journey that began with a question, what if we could evolve beyond our physical limitations, had come full circle. Alex, Elon, Maria, and their team had unearthed a knowledge that could change the very fabric of existence, revealing that humanity's true potential lay not in the physical world, but in the connection to a universal consciousness. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with resistance and obstacles, but the seeds of change had been planted. The future was unwritten, and in their hands, it would unfold. And for the first time, humanity could truly believe that the impossible was not only possible, but within reach.